Good morning. Good morning, everybody. You don't have a scenario for me, right? You don't have a scenario for me? Where?
It's page 34.
Good morning, everybody. Could I please ask that you are seated so we could begin our morning session continuing from item 8B. We will begin this morning with the draft decision 38Com 8B.42, which is the Bulgar Historical and Archaeological Complex with the Russian Federation. Before I pass the floor to ICOMOS, I will give the floor to Mr. Balsamo to give you an update. Mr. Balsamo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the nomination of Bulgar Historical and Archaeological Complex, Russian Federation, we received a factual error notification, which is to be found on page 97 of document INF 8B4 Rev. Thank you.
Thank you. Before moving forward, we got a request from somebody in the audience to request that people speak into the mic because they're having problems hearing you. So if I could ask that you speak in the mic, and again, celebrations, if they can happen outside the room, that will allow us to move swiftly with the agenda. ICOMOS, you now have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson, and good morning. Volga is a multi-layered archaeological site which contains a settlement of the Volga Bulgars and the first capital of the Golden Horde. It includes a former mosque, minarets, several mausoleums, bathhouses, remains of a Khan's palace and shrine, as well as defenses consisting of ramparts and moat. This is a deferred nomination from the committee meetings in 2000 and 2001, during which the committee discussed the authenticity and reconstructions at the site. The state party submitted a revised nomination in 2012, which was referred back at the 37th session. At that session, the committee recognized the outstanding universal value of the site and requested the state party, in collaboration with ICOMOS, to take adequate measures for an inscription on the basis of criteria 3 and 6 at this session. Additional documentation was then submitted in 2014. Volga lies at the shores of the Volga River, 40 kilometers south of its confluence with the river Kama. The property encompasses an area of 424 hectares. The considerably enlarged buffer zone is now more than 12,000 hectares. The archaeological remains present a stratigraphy of 6 layers, partially below contemporary modern structures. The site testifies to the Volga-Bulgar civilization and its settlement, constructed mainly between the 9th and 11th centuries, and the first capital of the Golden Horde established in the late 13th century. There are additional layers of the Kazan Khanate period of the mid-15th and 16th century, and the Russian history period, during which an Orthodox monastic complex was added. The central feature at Bulga is the historic mosque, preserved as an architectural ruin and one of the rare surviving architectural manifestations of the early Golden Horde. The minaret of this former mosque collapsed in 1841 and was reconstructed in the year 2000. The site involves several mausolea of noble families, and the Church of the Dormition of the Virgin, seen here, was built in the 18th century. The Khan's shrine was constructed at the beginning of the 14th century and is located close to several smaller mausoleums of the 14th and 15th centuries. The chambers were structures with various functions, some bathhouses, like the red or white chambers, others richly decorated courthouses, like the black chamber. The revised nomination also more prominently includes the impressive outer ramparts of the city, which provided the boundary of the historic settlement. ICOMOS notes that the committee acknowledged the outstanding universal value of the property based on criteria 3 and 6 at its 37th session. However, ICOMOS could not confirm authenticity and integrity to be demonstrated in relation to criterion 3. In consultation with the state party during its advisory mission, ICOMOS therefore recommended a resubmission under criteria 2 and 6, for which authenticity and integrity could be more easily demonstrated. The boundaries of the property encompass all relevant architectural and archaeological structures. The buffer zone now covers the complete width of the River Volga and the opposite river bank, and therefore protects the essential views across the river. Conservation measures are continuously undertaken. However, like last year, ICOMOS considers that restoration techniques and the scale of intervention are often rather extensive. ICOMOS acknowledges the climatic challenges and notes that the state of conservation is generally acceptable, often rather too perfect following restorations. The management authority is adequate and local communities are now integrated. In particular, the religious communities spearhead the organization of the religious ceremonies. Following the inclusion of criterion 6, the construction of the memorial sign can be seen to support the site's values rather than reduce its integrity, as ICOMOS considered in its last evaluation. The White Mosque at the southern boundary of the property can be interpreted in a similar way. ICOMOS considers that the boundaries, protection status, and management arrangements are adequate. However, ICOMOS considers that conservation activities should be more cautious in the future to ensure respect for material authenticity. Recalling the decision of the World Heritage Committee at its 37th session, which recognized the outstanding universal value of the site on the basis of criteria 3 and 6, ICOMOS reaffirms its original evaluation of the property and its finding that integrity and authenticity of the property has been affected and cannot be met with regard to criterion 3. As the World Heritage Committee has already determined that the property should be inscribed, it is the view of ICOMOS that this could be facilitated only in relation to criterion 2 and 6. Accordingly, ICOMOS recommends that the Bolga Historical and Archaeological Complex, Russian Federation, be inscribed on the World Heritage List on the basis of criteria 2 and 6. ICOMOS further recommends that the World Heritage Committee should invite the state party to submit by 1st December 2015 a report on a number of issues, including the finalization of the management plan, development of a monitoring system, confirmation of the previous oral commitment to move the pilgrimage village outside of the site boundaries, the creation of a comprehensive site archive and store, and the reduction of some conservation works already undertaken. ICOMOS also recommends that the state party refrains from any further development on site. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you very much. ICOMOS Lebanon, you now have the floor.
شكرا سيدتي الرئيسة. لن أحتكر الكلام طويلا. In its evaluation of this dossier, ICOMOS says that since the World Heritage Committee has already determined that the property should be inscribed on the World Heritage List, ICOMOS recommends its inscription despite its reservations concerning certain aspects regarding its authenticity and the validity of intensive reconstruction that took place since year 2000. If we read well the World Heritage Committee decision 37-8B43, we see that the committee, while recognizing the OUV of the site, referred it back to the state party in order to allow it, in collaboration with ICOMOS, to take adequate measure for an inscription on the basis of criteria 3 and 6. We see now that criterion 3 is abandoned and replaced by criterion 2 that was not proposed before. To justify this change, ICOMOS says that there is not enough physical evidence to justify inscription based on criterion 3. I'm sorry, but this does not look very professional to us, since given the physical condition of the site as described in ICOMOS report, quote, the intensive reconstruction and new construction that do not respect the scale and character of remaining heritage structures, end quote. It appears as hazardous to speak of physical evidence that justifies criterion 2 as is the case with criterion 3. Hence, in order to preserve its credibility, and in order to avoid more public debate that would harm the credibility of the site itself, the committee may choose to inscribe Bulgar based on criterion 6 alone. Although the operation guidelines state that criterion 6 should preferably be used in conjunction with other criteria, inscription under criterion 6 alone was adopted several times by the committee a few years ago, as for example, for the old bridge of Mostar inscribed in 2005 and Apravazi Ghat inscribed in 2006. We would like to have the opinion of ICOMOS concerning the justification of criteria 2 and 6. Thank you.
Portugal, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, and good morning to you. We rejoice with the inscription of this site in the World Heritage List and congratulate the Russian Federation for this success. We are confident that the small impact recommendations made by ICOMOS will promptly be fulfilled by Russia.
Thank you. Philippines, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Philippines extends its warmest felicitations to the state party Russia for the inscription of the Bulgar Historical and Archaeological Complex. We would like to highlight the fact that the tireless effort of the state party to fine-tune and improve the nomination dossier over some time so as to highlight the correct criteria of outstanding universal value is noteworthy for other state parties to emulate. We second the recommendation of the advisory body for the finalization of their management plan. And I think for everyone that this nomination dossier is a constant reminder to us all to adopt a cautious approach in conservation to uphold values of authenticity and integrity. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Kazakhstan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To foster further diversity of languages for this nomination, we'd like to switch to Russian. Уважаемая госпожа председатель, Булгар – один из самых известных средневековых памятников Евразии. Археологические исследования этого бесценного памятника истории и культуры принесли не только большое количество уникальных находок, представленных значительными музейными коллекциями, но и открыли истории государства Волжской Булгарии, являвшейся вратами торговли между Востоком и Западом. История этого выдающегося города описана в трудах многих арабских географов. Сохранность архитектурных объектов сделала Булгар визитной карточкой и брендом субъекта Российской Федерации, братской нам Республики Татарстан. Процесс включения объекта в список всемирного наследия имеет долгую историю. На данный момент государствам-участникам проведены все необходимые меры в соответствии с рекомендациями Комитета и КАМОС, в связи с чем мы безоговорочно поддерживаем включение Булгар, выдающегося объекта истории и культуры, в список всемирного наследия ЮНЕСКО на основе критериев 2 и 6. Спасибо за внимание.
Thank you. Senegal, you have the floor.
Merci à Madame la Présidente. Je dois dire que je suis presque un peu étonné qu'on se mette à redébattre de cette question. Je pense que cette question a été très largement évoquée la dernière fois. Il faudrait que le comité ait de la suite dans les démarches et les décisions. Et on avait demandé, on avait obtenu un consensus, on avait demandé aux organisations consultatives de faire le travail. Je pense qu'elles ont très bien fait le travail et ce qu'il nous reste à faire, c'est de procéder à l'inscription, ne pas reprendre ce débat qui a déjà été fait et qui nous avait coûté à l'époque une demi-journée, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Senegal. If distinguished colleagues, if you agree with Senegal, I would like to move with the inscription. Germany says no, India says no, so we'll stay on the order. Poland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Madam. A review of documents available for the session has demonstrated that in the case of Bulgar, there is uncertainty about the authenticity of the site, which is among the rudimentary criteria of nomination of properties to the World Heritage List. In particular, the reference to the paragraph 86 of the operational guidelines of significance in this respect. As we all know, the nomination of Bulgar has been discussed in committee sessions on many occasions. In its statement this year, ICOMOS stated that the restoration activities were extensive, sometimes without a clear justification, and since the ICOMOS evaluation of the property in 2001, its authenticity in material substance, craftsmanship, and setting has been reduced. ICOMOS observed that several other layers of the multi-layered history of the site are far better preserved than the evidence of the Volga-Bulgar civilization. That's why ICOMOS states that possible inscription could be justified only in relation to criteria 2 and 6. Let me read the paragraph on authenticity in proposed statement of outstanding universal value. The number of architectural and other interventions on site is substantial and has affected the authenticity of the overall complex and, in one instance, reduced the archaeological evidence providing testimony to the Volga-Bulgar civilization. These also include past conservation activities at the property, which included reconstructions and partial rebuilding works. In other places, restoration measures conducted were extensive, sometimes without clear justification, and have reduced authenticity in material substance, craftsmanship, and setting. On the other hand, the property's ramparts and moat remain fully authentic, as well as the large-scale archaeological areas yet to be researched and surveyed. In addition, the religious reference function of Bulgar to Tatar Muslims retain a high level of authenticity, in particular with regard to the location, spirit, and feeling, which have not been affected by the recent addition of religious structures built in support of the religious values. Referring to its assessment to Bulgar as a testimony of the Tatar Muslim culture, ICOMOS states that the location, spirit, and feeling have been retained. Paragraph 86 of operational guidelines provides, however, that attributes such as the spirit of feeling in and of themselves are difficult to particularly use for the assessment of authenticity. The conditions of integrity and authenticity have been compromised and remain vulnerable. Therefore, we would like to request ICOMOS to supplement the justification of recommendation in order to better understand the substantive basis before a final decision is made. Thank you.
Thank you. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Japan also would like to celebrate this property to be inscribed and to pay our tribute and respect to the state party for its long-term hard effort, especially made after the deferral decision in year 2000. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Qatar, you have the floor.
شكرا سيدة الرئيسة. كان لي الحظ في عام 2012 في زيارة هذه المنطقة الرائعة، وكما نرى على الصورة فإنها تخلط بين يعني جمع للثقافات، فنرى المنارة ونرى بجانبها أو خلفها الكنيسة، فهذا موقع يستحق التسجيل لأنه ربط بين حضارات مختلفة، كما أن الوجود الإسلامي يرجع إلى عام 922 إثر زيارة العالم والرحالة أحمد بن فضلان في رحلته الشهيرة المسمى رحلة ابن فضلان، التي شملت قرابة 5000 شخص أرسلهم الخليفة العباسي المقتدر بالله. ولدخول الإسلام في هذه المنطقة قصة رائعة، يعني نقترح على المهتمين قراءتها، ونحن نشكر الأيكوموس على عملهم يعني في هذا الملف، كما نشكر روسيا، حكومة روسيا الاتحادية وجمهورية تتارستان على جهودهم في هذا الملف المتميز، وشكرا.
Thank you. India, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I say how delighted India is at the inscription of the Bulgar archaeological complex. If committee members will recall, we were equally convinced last year of the outstanding universal value of this property as we are this year, and would thus unhesitatingly and unequivocally support the inscription of this property in the World Heritage List. India would also like to take this opportunity to congratulate Russia for the outstanding effort put into the nomination dossier to meet the exacting demands for inscription. If anything, this success demonstrates the value of hard work and persistence, which can transform a referral to an inscription, and we yet again congratulate Russia for their success on this front. To sum up, Madam Chair, India is absolutely delighted, and if I may say so, rejoices at the inscription of the Bulgar archaeological complex. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, India. Jamaica, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We believe state parties should be commended for successfully undertaking a deferral process, as is evidenced with the Bulgar Historical and Archaeological Complex. A deferral gives a state party an opportunity to prove their site's OUV, and this in itself must be encouraged and celebrated. Thank you.
Thank you. Germany, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Last year, the committee decided clearly to apply criteria 3 and 4 for demonstrating the outstanding universal value of the site. Instead of 3, now 2 is proposed. There was a clear decision again to criteria 3 has to be justified. We fully support what has been said by the distinguished delegates of Lebanon and Portugal. We go along with the proposal to inscribe the site only on the basis of criterion 6. And I have another remark. I'm a little bit astonished because last year the decision said that ICOMOS gets the task to give advice to the state party. Now I got the information that there was a high-level mission, a joint ICOMOS center mission, and I'd like to ask who decided that a joint center and high-level center, ICOMOS and high-level mission was necessary.
Thank you, Germany. Finland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Finland would like to congratulate the state party on the inscription of Bulgar Historical and Archaeological Complex to the World Heritage List. Bulgar have faced difficulties over the years, facing deferrals and even a non-inscription. We are pleased to see that the pieces of the puzzle finally have fallen into place, and it is time to inscribe this historical site, which also have a Finno-Ugrian element on the World Heritage List. Thank you.
Thank you. Colombia, you have the floor.
Gracias, señora presidenta. Muy buenos días para usted y para todos los asistentes. Nuestra delegación considera que este ejemplo de Bulgar es una prueba contundente de los beneficios que trae a todos el profundo respeto por nuestra convención, nuestras directrices operativas, nuestros procedimientos y nuestros cronogramas. Agradece y reconoce el valioso trabajo de ICOMOS a lo largo de todos estos años y respalda plenamente la inscripción bajo los criterios y puntos de vista expresados por el distinguido delegado de Líbano. Gracias.
Thank you. Algeria, you have the floor.
Oui, merci Madame la Présidente. La délégation algérienne se joint à d'autres délégations qui nous ont précédés pour d'abord féliciter la Fédération de Russie pour avoir répondu aux recommandations de l'ICOMOS afin d'améliorer la promotion et la préservation de cet ensemble historique et archéologique de Bulgare. C'est la raison pour laquelle la délégation algérienne appuie très fortement son inscription sur la liste du patrimoine mondial avec les critères qui lui ont été reconnus, et nous considérons en tout état de cause que le critère 6 ne peut être à lui seul considéré, il doit être pris en liaison avec les autres critères, le critère 2 notamment, qui permet justement d'atteindre l'objectif recherché. Merci.
Croatia, you have the floor.
Just be brief, Madam Chair, and I would go along commending the State Party of Russia for their hard work on the nomination of Bulgar. Thank you.
Thank you. Serbia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. My delegation fully subscribes what was said by the delegation of Senegal and India, and we thank Russia for this important nomination. We fully support the inscription of Bulgaria into the list. Thank you.
Thank you, Malaysia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our delegation remembers this site was discussed at great length in the last meeting, and we are very happy, delighted that the State Party has done a good job, and we congratulate them on the inscription.
Thank you. I will now give the floor to the Secretariat to respond to the comments made by Germany. Mr.
Thank you, Chairperson.
I lost your name for
yes,
a moment.
very simply. Yes, in fact, the committee, as you remember, had asked for e-commerce advisory mission, which was done during a few days last year. During those days, I happened also to visit the capital of Kazan, because I was giving some lectures there. So we actually met in Kazan, but it was not a joint mission. It was not a high-level mission. It was just a path crossing during that occasion. So for us, we consider this as being complied exactly as the committee had asked.
So that was a coincidence. Vietnam, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Le Vietnam se joint à d'autres délégations pour appuyer l'inscription de ce site sur la liste du patrimoine mondial. Il s'agit en fait d'un carrefour d'échanges culturels entre l'Est et l'Ouest. Nous saisissons cette occasion pour féliciter donc l'État parti pour cette inscription. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Poland. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, Madam. We ask for some explanations about the authenticity, and after receiving that, we can support inscription on the criterion 6, but with the criterion 2, we have difficulties, but we need more explanation from the ICOMOS on that.
I was about to give it to ICOMOS. Before I give it to ICOMOS, Turkey, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be very brief. We also fully support the inscription of the site, but we would like to hear ICOMOS' answer on the points raised by the distinguished representative of Lebanon. Thank you.
ICOMOS, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. I would start with the question posed by the Honorable Delegate of Lebanon, which partly leads over to the question that Poland has addressed. In terms of the justification of criteria and the authenticity of attributes in which those criteria are manifested, criterion 3 initially related to the testimony of the cultural tradition or civilization of the Volga Bulgars. And the Volga Bulgar level of the site is one that had been in particular compromised by previous restoration and excavation as well as construction measures. And we felt that on this particular historic level, there was not enough material evidence left to justify a inscription on the basis of outstanding universal value related to this particular civilization. However, we noted that the site is multi-layered. It's not only a former settlement of the Volga Bulgars, it had earlier civilizations as well as later, including the Golden Horde, the Kazan Khanate, and the Russian period, as well as others. And so the feeling was that if a criterion would need to be found that could qualify authenticity, it would rather be criterion 2, illustrating the exchange and reintegration of several subsequent cultural traditions and rulers and their effects and influences on the architecture, city planning, and landscape design of the site. And some of the other historic layers have a much stronger material evidence than the layer of the Volga-Bulgar civilization. With regard to criterion 6, which was added by the committee at its 37th session in the previous year, this particular criterion is justified as, or is is elaborated as Volga has become a regional reference point for especially the Tatar Muslims, but also other Muslim groups of Eurasia, as it is associated to religious and spiritual values predominantly demonstrated during the pilgrimage session, and these relate to the acceptance of Islam in the particular spot of the historic site in 922. Now, with regard to authenticity, to move over to the question posed by Poland, ICOMOS has already confirmed during the previous 37th session that the authenticity in relation to criterion 6 is very strong, as the spiritual associations, the atmosphere, and the belief in the place continues until today. And every year during an annual pilgrimage season, very active religious ceremonies and celebrations take place on site, and the site is mostly visited for religious purposes. So the complete association to the religious and spiritual values seems to be very lively and has a high degree of authenticity. I hope that answers both questions. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you very much. With that being said, Mr. Rapporteur, could you please, Germany, have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, to give me again the floor. I just to make a last point. A few days before, ICOMOS underlined that the role of the expert is handled very strictly. Now I have to take note of the fact that the expert who went on mission to Bolgar is presenting the dossier. I think in comparison to Bolgar, all other state parties are in disadvantage. Only Bolgar has the benefit to be presented by the expert who did the evaluation. Thank you very much. As we stated before, we are going along with the decision to describe the site on the basis of criterion 6.
ICOMOS, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. In fact, the technical evaluation mission to the site was done by an expert who is not present at the moment. The advisory mission was done by a group of experts who are all in the room today. And since the inscription was to be facilitated, ICOMOS considered that it was not a neutral role in evaluation that was required at this point, but an advisory role which would not constitute a conflict of interest in this context. Thank you very much.
Thank you. With that being said, Mr. Rapporteur, could you please read the amendment for this draft decision?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good morning. For this draft decision 38-8P42, we have received no amendments in written so far. So I think that you can proceed or move for the adoption of the decision, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Poland, you have the floor.
Can we just now propose the inscription on the criteria 6 alone? As it was said by a few delegates.
Senegal.
Madame la Présidente, nous avons travaillé sur ce dossier-là pendant une journée et demie. Nous avons envoyé les organisations consultatives qui ont fait leur travail. Autant nous pensons qu'il ne faut pas être suspicieux vis-à-vis des États, autant nous pensons qu'il ne faut pas l'être vis-à-vis des organisations consultatives qui ont toute notre confiance. Si la Pologne n'est pas d'accord sur cette proposition, qu'on passe au vote.
Qatar.
شكرا سيدة الرئيسة. نحن نتفق تماما مع السنغال حيث أن هذا الموضوع فعلا أخذ نصف يوم العام الماضي في بنوم بنا والآن نحن أمام يعني قرار نستطيع أن نتفق عليه، وأنا متفق تماما مع ما ذكره زميلي من السنغال. شكرا.
Lebanon.
Madame la Présidente, le problème n'est pas d'inscrire ou de ne pas inscrire. Je pense que tout le monde est d'accord pour l'inscription. De toute façon, la décision du comité a été prise l'année passée. Le problème simplement provient de ce que le comité a proposé d'inscrire sur la base des critères 3 et 6 et qu'aujourd'hui on nous dit non, on va utiliser le critère 2. Bon, il y a des gens qui se posent des questions sur la validité du critère 2 et je pense que c'est tout à fait normal. Bon, maintenant, on ne va pas recommencer le débat 50 fois. Nous pensons, enfin personnellement en tant qu'expert et le Liban qui me fait confiance, considère que effectivement le critère 6 est tout à fait approprié à tous les points de vue, y compris au niveau de l'authenticité, de l'intégrité, etc. Que le critère 2, il y a des questions qui se posent. Bon, maintenant, si on ne va pas recommencer le débat et on ne va certainement pas faire un vote, s'il y a un problème, ben, on va faire passer comme ça. Personnellement, moi, je me joins à la majorité. Mais techniquement, il aurait mieux valu de rester sur le critère 6 et je reproche à ICOMOS de ne pas avoir pris son rôle de façon technique claire. Parce que c'est clair que pour le critère 2, au niveau de l'authenticité, ça ne marche pas. Et ils le savent aussi bien que moi. Merci.
Jazair.
Alors, Madame la Présidente, n'allongeons pas le débat. Je crois que tout a été dit par mes collègues du Sénégal notamment, mais je ne suis pas d'accord pour le vote, parce qu'il y a eu un consensus, il faut le préserver. Il y va de notre crédibilité. Je ne vais pas m'étendre sur les critères. Je crois que nous avons dit ce qu'il fallait. Adoptons la décision. Merci.
So we have two conflicting views. We need a consensus on at least one over the other if we're not going to go to vote. Algeria?
Madame la Présidente, je ne crois pas qu'il y ait encore un conflit. Je crois que tout le monde est pour le consensus. Moi, en tout cas, à travers vous, je lance un appel aux membres du comité pour qu'on évite le vote, parce qu'il n'y en a pas eu. Je ne crois pas que ce soit une bonne décision que d'aller vers un vote sur quelque chose qui a fait l'objet de pas mal de discussions. S'il n'avait pas été discuté, oui, il a été discuté. Donc, j'en appelle à tous mes collègues pour que ce texte soit adopté sur la base de ce qui nous est proposé, c'est-à-dire les critères 2 et 6. Même mon collègue du Liban qui avait à l'origine posé le problème a déclaré vouloir se joindre au consensus. Donc nous devons préserver cette dynamique et adopter le texte sans vote. Merci.
Sénégal.
Je vous remercie, Madame la Présidente. Madame la Présidente, je voudrais faire un appel à la Pologne pour qu'elle puisse se rallier à la majorité. Merci. Et que nous puissions aller sur le consensus, naturellement.
Lebanon? Poland, can you accept the criteria 2 and 6 so that we could move on to the draft decision?
Well, as I remember, we take the decision by the majority or 2/3 of the majority, so there is no problem to adopt the decision as it is, as I understand.
Thank you. With Germany?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Perhaps a way out could be to add an amendment stating that we are a little bit concerned concerning the authenticity of the site, and to address this issue in an amendment to the decision. I have no idea about the wording at the moment, but we should look for it.
Does anybody suggest an amendment or object to the suggestion of Germany? Algeria.
Madame la Présidente, je crois que la préoccupation de l'Allemagne figure au paragraphe 3. Parce que là, justement, on dit bien ce qu'on dit. Considère aussi que cette proposition d'inscription ne pourrait être maintenant justifiée que sur la base des critères 2 et 6, c'est-à-dire elle pourrait être justifiée. Elle n'est pas totalement justifiée puisqu'après, on demande à l'État partie de prendre les mesures nécessaires pour y répondre. Merci.
Kazakhstan.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Well, I again speak in Russian. На основании фактологического материала, ярко иллюстрирующего взаимообмен тюркских, финно-угорских, славянских и прочих традиций, в частности в рамках культур волжских булгар, Золотой Орды и Казанского ханства, мы полностью поддерживаем включение объекта по критерию 2. Критерий 6 не вызывает никаких вопросов. Вместе с тем, по нашему мнению, критерий 3, в рамках которого Болгар предлагался в качестве уникального свидетельства древних цивилизаций Волжской Болгарии и Золотой Орды, как предоставляющий единственные физические следы Волжской Булгарии в период рассвета, кажется нам вполне обоснованным. Аутентичность в этой связи представляется обоснованной в связи с тем, что реконструкции подкреплены историческими свидетельствами. В этой связи мы предлагаем внести, добавить в пункт 4 проекта решения также критерий 3. Спасибо.
Japan, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Japan would like to support as it is standard original decisions 2 and it's inscribed criterion 2 and 6. As the applicability of the criterion 3, we have some we need some discussion for that because it's how to apply criterion 3 for archaeological sites. That is in many sites, many areas in the world. Archaeological sites does not matter, it's also including the underground things. In Asia, is most sites remain in underground, and how much to the judge the authenticity of the archaeological sites, that is also we have to wait for the discussions. So at this moment, Japan would like to support is inscribe the site and the criterion 2 and 6. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Japan, Lebanon.
Yes, Mrs. President, we are coming back to a political discussion. We had reached a consensus on 2 and 6, and Kazakhstan is now asking 3. Okay, stop it. Stop it, please. Stop politicizing things. We are speaking technical. Technically, we all know, all technicians know, that only criterion 6 applies, which is a very nice criterion. It's a very important criterion. For me, it's the most important in the convention. However, we accepted because ICOMOS said, well, criterion 2 may apply. We accepted criterion 2. And now, criterion 3. Okay, why not criterion 1 and 4 and 5 also? Thank you. Merci.
Thank you, Lebanon. India.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too, like Lebanon and some of the earlier speakers, feel that I think we shouldn't overly prolong this debate. This is a clear-cut case for inscription, which I think all of us support. So as far as India is concerned, we too, like Japan, would support that we go ahead with this inscription based on the original formulation, criteria 2 and criteria 6. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. With that being said, Mr. Rapporteur, could you please take the floor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And according to the interventions of the members of the committee, I think I've understood that the delegation of Poland is in favor of withdrawing their amendment. So there is only one question that still we have on the table, and it is the proposal of Kazakhstan for concerning the addition of criteria 3. There is the only situation that we need to clarify. Otherwise, I think that the committee is in agreement to adopt the decision on the basis of criteria 2 and on criteria
2 and 6.
2 and 6, sorry. Yes, Madam Chair, thank you.
It's the intervention from Lebanon that melted you up, I think. But Kazakhstan, would you withdraw the recommendation of inscribing criteria 3?
Yes, Madam Chair. We'll go along with criteria 2 and 6 as the majority.
Thank you. And Germany, are you satisfied?
Yes, we go along with it.
Okay, so with that being said, I see no more comments or objections. I now declare decision 38.8b.42 adopted. No amendment. There is no amendment. Let me congratulate the Russian Federation on behalf of the entire committee for this inscription of property. Russian Federation, you have the floor. Thank you.
Уважаемая госпожа председатель, с огромной благодарностью и чувством высокой ответственности Российская Федерация и Республика Татарстан принимают долгожданное и важное для нас решение о включении в список всемирного наследия древнего города Болгар. Этот историко-архитектурный и духовный памятник является местом добровольного принятия ислама на самых северных территориях. Как у нас говорят, это ислам на снегу. Многие тысячи людей ежегодно устремляются в Болгар, чтобы отдать дань его древней истории, поклониться Святой Земле, помолиться у сохранившихся исторических минаретов. Буквально на днях более 30 тысяч мусульман из России и многочисленные гости из разных стран мира приняли участие в праздновании в Болгаре 1125-й годовщины принятия ислама в Волжской Болгарии. Считаем особенно важным, что решение о включении Болгара в список всемирного наследия принято здесь, в Катаре, на священной земле которого с VII века исповедуется ислам. Уважаемые дамы и господа, мы глубоко осознаем свою ответственность перед ЮНЕСКО за дальнейшую сохранность нашего уникального исторического объекта. Строгие и принципиальные требования консультативных органов ЮНЕСКО стали для нас серьезной школой. Позвольте поблагодарить их за оказанную помощь и поддержку и заверить в нашем намерении строго следовать всем установленным ЮНЕСКО требованиям для надлежащего сохранения древнего Болгара. В этом стремлении нас, безусловно, поддерживает руководство Российской Федерации и весь народ Республики Татарстан, вне зависимости от вероисповедания и национальности. Для нас сохранение Болгара – это сфера высокой культуры, духовности, это колоссальная ответственность перед будущими поколениями. Благодарю за внимание. Шукран.
Браво!
Thank you very much to the Russian Federation, and once again, congratulations on this inscription. We will now move on to the draft decision 38.8b.44, and that relates to the pre-Columbian chiefdom settlements with stone spheres of Diqui in Costa Rica. Could I please request that the mic of the Russian Federation be switched off? Can somebody, thank you very much. With that being said, I will now give the floor to ICOMOS to make the presentation. ICOMOS, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. The pre-Columbian chiefdom settlements with stone spheres of the Diquis represent 4 different settlement sites of chiefdom societies and contain artificial mounds, paved areas, burial sites, and most significantly, a collection of very distinctive stone spheres. This serial nomination combines 4 archaeological sites located in the Diquis Delta in southern Costa Rica. The 4 archaeological sites of Finca 6, Batambal, El Silencio, and Grijalba II together form a property area of close to 25 hectares and are surrounded by buffer zones of 142 hectares. One of the sites is located in the lower alluvial plains of the delta, while the others are slightly raised on the upper river plateau. Finca 6 is a property component of 10 hectares surrounded by banana plantation in an alluvial plain close to the river creek. The site contains a plaza with 2 alignments of stone spheres which are located in their original position and oriented along an east-west axis. There are further 2 artificial mounds with diameters of 20 and 30 meters, which retain well-preserved walls. Due to the high level of sedimentation at this site, the archaeological structures are covered by up to 1.5 meters deposit material. Batambal site covers only 1 hectare near a settlement at the foothills of the coastal Cordillera. The site contains a set of 4 stone spheres, and a sculpture and sandstone monolith were discovered. The site also features elevations with boulders and different types of archaeological material. El Silencio site covers 6 hectares in a teak tree plantation on the terrace of the Teraba River. It contains the largest recorded stone sphere, 2.57 meters in diameter and weighing about 24 tons. The site also contains finds of what is believed to be tools for the production of the Dikis stone spheres. Grijalba II site covers an area of 8 hectares surrounded by small farms as well as forests on the upper terrace of the Balsa River. The site comprises several mounds, pavements built with boulders, and a single stone sphere of 1.2 diameter, which is partially buried. ICOMOS considers that the comparative analysis provided justification for the serial approach and the selection of the 4 properties on the basis of criterion 3. ICOMOS further considers that the sites demonstrate authenticity and integrity. The component site of Finca 6 is regularly threatened by floods, and research is currently underway to define means to reduce the negative impact of flooding on the site. While the state party argues that the construction of a hydroelectric dam near the site component of Batambal would reduce future flooding, ICOMOS considers that this project might also have negative impacts and needs to be carefully considered by a heritage impact assessment before any decisions are made. The same is valid for a second project, the Southern International Airport, as one of the possible locations discussed would be located at 3-kilometer distance to the site of Finca 6. Only the Finca 6 site is currently open to public and provides site interpretation services, including a recently built visitor center. Basic interpretation shall be provided for the other 3 component sites by the end of this year. However, in ICOMOS' view, for all interpretation concepts envisaged, the archaeological resources need to remain the key attraction of the site, whilst other elements should merely facilitate visiting and learning, as well as, where necessary, the protection of the historic structures. ICOMOS considers that the boundaries and the revised buffer zones are now adequate, and the protection status as well as conservation and management schemes are sufficient. Accordingly, ICOMOS recommends that the pre-Columbian chiefdom settlements with stone spheres of the Dikis, Costa Rica, be inscribed on the World Heritage List on the basis of criterion 3. ICOMOS further recommends that the state party conducts detailed heritage impact assessments for the hydroelectric dam and the Southern International Airport before any decisions are made, that it reaches an agreement with the property owner of El Silencio and completes the development of risk preparedness and disaster plans for Finca 6. And it also recommends to ascertain the required financial and personal resources, to involve local teams in the process of monitoring, and to augment the monitoring indicators. And ICOMOS would like to specifically commend the state party for its policy not to initiate new excavations or visitor promotion before the current conservation necessities are addressed, and recommends to continue this exemplary approach in the future. Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you, ICOMOS. Colombia, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora presidenta. En primer lugar, nosotros queremos agradecer y reconocer el enorme esfuerzo que ha hecho ICOMOS por la comprensión de este enigmático sitio, y efectivamente felicitar a Costa Rica por ese esfuerzo también que hace constantemente, no solamente para la protección de sus sitios naturales, sino a partir de este momento con la inscripción del primer sitio cultural en la lista del Patrimonio Mundial. Respaldamos amplia y positivamente la inscripción de este sitio en la lista. Gracias.
Germany.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to thank the State Party for this wonderful nomination, and we do agree with the evaluation by ICOMOS. The site should be inscribed today. Thank you.
Thank you. Finland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Finland would like to echo the previous speakers and supports warmly the inscription of the pre-Columbian chiefdom settlements with stone spheres of the Diquis on the World Heritage List. As stated by ICOMOS in its evaluation, Finland also thinks that this site should be inscribed on the list on the basis of criteria 3. We want to thank the State Party of Costa Rica for having put forward this outstanding nomination. Thank you.
Jamaica.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jamaica would like to commend the State Party and ICOMOS for this nomination that combines 4 archaeological sites nominated on the basis of cultural criterion 3. We support the inscription. Thank you.
Thank you. Philippines.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Philippines congratulates the State Party for the stone spheres of Diquis, qualifying for inscription on the World Heritage List on the basis of criteria 3. The OUV of stone spheres of Diquis lies in its being an exceptional testimony of artistic production in the pre-Columbian era. Gracias, Señora Presidencia.
Thank you. Croatia.
Just the same as my previous colleague said, spheres from Costa Rica are among the finest examples of pre-Columbian art, and we are happy to witness this exemplary nomination to be inscribed. Thank you.
Turkey, you have the floor.
Turkey congratulates Costa Rica for this nomination, which has elevated the standards of nomination dossiers and conservation of World Heritage sites to a higher level. The approach of Costa Rica is an exemplary one, for it prioritizes conservation over tourism and short-term gains. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Vietnam, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Le Vietnam se joint à d'autres délégations pour appuyer l'inscription de ce site sur la liste du patrimoine moderne et nous félicitons donc l'État partie pour les efforts entrepris en vue de l'inscription. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you. الجزائر.
شكرا سيدتي الرئيسة. إن الوفد الجزائري يؤيد ما جاءت به كوستاريكا ونهنئه على تقديم هذا المشروع pour son inscription sur la liste du patrimoine mondial. Merci, Madame.
Shukran. India.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to briefly congratulate ICOMOS for their work in presenting this report, and to warmly congratulate Costa Rica for bringing forward this beautiful property.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rapporteur, could you please confirm that you have received no amendments to this draft decision?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Indeed, we have received no amendments for this draft decision. Thank you very much.
Congratulations to you, Mr. Rapporteur. I can now declare decision 38-8B.44 adopted. Oh, sorry, Poland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As there were certain advisory body concerns according to the construction of the dam and the airport, we would like to suggest to add a standard paragraph as it was previously added to ask the state party to prepare a report to be stated to the committee at the 40th session.
Thank you. Mr. Rapporteur, could you please ensure that it's added?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I engage myself, of course, to add this standard paragraph, and in order to save time, you can proceed for the adoption. I assure the delegation of Poland this paragraph will be included in the draft decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that being said, I declare decision 38-8B.4 adopted. Let me congratulate Costa Rica on behalf of the entire committee for the inscription of this property. Costa Rica, you have the floor. Costa Rica, would you like to take the floor?
Yes, Madam.
Thank you.
Su Excelencia,
Sheikha Al-Mayasa bin Hamad bin Khalifa Al-Thani, Presidenta, miembros del Comité de Patrimonio Cultural, miembros de íconos, distinguidas delegaciones. Assalamu alaikum. La delegación de la República de Costa Rica agradece la hospitalidad recibida y extiende su felicitación al gobierno y al pueblo de Qatar por la ya conocida excelencia en la organización de estos eventos. A la vez agradece al Centro de Patrimonio Mundial, a los miembros de ICOMOS y a los países que integran el comité, de corazón, por la aprobación de la inscripción de los asentamientos cacicales precolombinos con esferas de piedra del Diquís en la lista del Patrimonio Mundial. Con este, nuestro primer conjunto de sitios culturales inscritos, así como la valiosa ayuda prestada por la señora Nuria Sáenz durante el proceso de preparación del proyecto. Esta inscripción significa un reconocimiento al esfuerzo de un país pequeño en la protección de su patrimonio cultural, así como de los legados tangibles de las antiguas, diversas y complejas ocupaciones de los bosques tropicales del sur de América Central en tiempos precolombinos. Reconoce además los logros de las sociedades preestatales, incluido su excepcional desarrollo artístico y artesanal, como se evidencia en el legado material que conservamos de esas culturas, y los sitios que, aunque no monumentales, son igualmente esenciales para entender el desarrollo de la humanidad como un todo. La República de Costa Rica celebra la decisión y se compromete a poner en práctica las recomendaciones y realizar las acciones necesarias para mantener las condiciones de los sitios a través del tiempo. Para lograr tal propósito, agradece a la vez, adicionalmente a nuestro propio esfuerzo, toda colaboración que se le pueda brindar mediante, entre otros, asesoramiento técnico y científico en los procedimientos de post-inscripción. Shukran.
Thank you very much. Congratulations once again, Costa Rica. With that being said, we have now finished the cultural properties with sites for nominations, and we'll move on to the mixed natural and culture properties, beginning with the draft decision 38-8B.14, which is the Trang An Landscape Complex in Vietnam. Before I give the floor to ICOMOS, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Balsamo. Mr. Balsamo, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We received a factual error notification concerning the nomination of Trang An Landscape Complex from Vietnam. And this is to be found on page 124 of document info 8B4 Rev. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there a preference for ICOMOS or IUCN? Who would like to begin? ICOMOS, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Trang An Landscape Complex. At the southern edge of the Red River Delta, Trang An is a dramatic, towering karst limestone landscape interspersed by a network of flat valleys, some flooded, and framed by sheer, almost vertical cliffs. Exploration of some of the higher level caves that punctuate parts of this landscape have revealed archaeological evidence for seasonal human activity from the late Pleistocene to the early Middle Holocene periods, spanning more than 30,000 years. This evidence is beginning to chronicle the way early human groups adapted to far-reaching environmental changes at the end of the last glacial period, and with further work might provide a reference for understanding the process of adaptation to and recolonization of landscapes under changing conditions. The property also includes Hoa Lu, the ancient capital of Vietnam in the 10th and 11th centuries, as well as temples, pagodas, and scenic areas. In terms of categories, this is a site It is also a cultural landscape. The property is made up mainly of 3 contiguous areas: the Hoa Lu Special Primary Forest in the west, which is green, the Hoa Lu Ancient Capital to the north, marked yellow, and the Trang Am and Kok Bich Dong Scenic Area, which is light brown. The primary cultural focus of the nomination is the Hoa Lu Special Primary Forest, in which there are some 29 caves, rock shelters, and other archaeological sites. This is the green area. To its northwest are the remains of the Hoa Lu Capital, and the remainder of the property is the scenic area, where 14,000 people live. The justification for criterion 5, the sole cultural criterion, is related to the excavations in 9 of the caves, while the scenic cultural landscape is related to natural criterion 7. The remains of Hoa Lu and the numerous temples and pagodas are not related to any of the criteria, either cultural or natural. ICOMOS considers that from a cultural perspective, the reasons for nominating this property are confusing, as the main cultural attributes are mainly in the Hoa Lu Special Forest Area only. Since 2007, archaeological investigations have been undertaken in 9 of the 29 caves. The results are said to have revealed evidence of seasonal use by prehistoric people over a 30,000 year time span. The outcome of the fusion of evidence emerging from the work of archaeologists and geologists is evidence of long-term human interaction with the environment. Trang On is said to be one of the longest, most securely dated, and already most intensively studied such sequences in Vietnam, which is beginning to show how people reacted to these changes. Although the caves are mostly in remote sites, which is beneficial for their conservation, there are concerns that the integrity of some of the excavated caves is now vulnerable to a lack of backfilling of the archaeological material, and this has led to some inevitable loss of information. The authenticity of the archaeological evidence is also vulnerable in some of the excavated caves due to the lack of support for archaeological sections. This archaeological work has been directed only at a small proportion of the potentially rich cave resources for the Trang On Massif and is still continuing. The full potential of the area remains to be revealed or understood. Hoa Lu, in the north of the property, served as a political capital for 42 years during the Din dynasty, from 968 to 1010 in the present era. Although annotated photographs are supplied in the nomination dossier, it has not been related to the cultural criteria. Within the property, there are also said to be hundreds of historic pagodas, temples, and shrines. Likewise, these have not been related to the criteria. And these temples, likewise, are not put forward in terms of the outstanding universal value under culture. The third area is the scenic area of rice paddies, where there are villages. This extraordinarily picturesque landscape is a magnet for visitors, but this part of the property has been nominated under natural criteria only. From a cultural perspective, the boundaries do not relate in a meaningful way to the archaeological records so far uncovered in the caves. The remains of Hoa Lu and the scenic landscape are not relevant to a nomination for a series of archaeological sites that relate to the late Pleistocene to early Middle Holocene periods. Although some of the caves have revealed information about people's relationship to climate change in Vietnam, ICOMOS considers that on the basis of the work so far undertaken, what has not been established is that Trang On is a site that has fundamentally altered our views of early history. Overall, the field of environmental archaeological research is a rapidly developing one, which needs to be considered in terms not only of sites in Southeast Asia, but also further afield. The case is being made that Trang An can be seen as contributing to an understanding of human response to changing environments in a very specific coastal area. Given the current state of knowledge, it is difficult to say whether Trang On will prove in the long term to be a defining moment in our knowledge of human response to climatic variations, and thus to be seen of outstanding importance. Criterion 5, therefore, has in ICOMOS' view not so far been demonstrated. As the cultural attributes only relate to that part of the property, we also consider that there can be no overall integrity in cultural terms in relation to completeness of the site. And as has already been mentioned, integrity is vulnerable for individual caves. For the authenticity of the overall series, the landscape does not reflect as a whole the relationship between early humans and climate change. And there are also concerns about vulnerabilities for authenticity in some of the caves. The comparative analysis as so far produced does not justify the exceptionality of this property in terms of the rapidly emerging environmental archaeological discipline. ICOMOS notes that the development of visitor facilities appears to be moving forward rapidly. Currently, around 1 million tourists visit the property annually, but this number is growing. Perhaps the greatest impact has been caused by a new road within the protected area of the ancient capital and by a new resort currently under construction within the property. ICOMOS considers that it is not clear how protective arrangements for the property and the buffer zone are currently being managed in relation to the stated visual importance of the property and its natural value, and also the sensitivity of the archaeological layers. The caves are protected as part of the forest reserve, but ICOMOS considers that stricter protection is needed for these archaeological caves within well-defined boundaries. Conservation concerns have already been mentioned. In terms of management, ICOMOS does not consider that it is currently robust enough to meet the challenges of the protection of the archaeological resource, and as well in terms of managing the tourism development. In conclusion, Madam Chair, ICOMOS recommends the examination of the nomination of Trangam Landscape Complex be deferred in order to allow the state party, with the advice of ICOMOS and the World Heritage Centre if requested, to continue its archaeological and geological research. And if a substantial publication of the results of this further work can demonstrate the way that Trangam might be seen as an exemplar site, consider renominating the property, but within a boundary that clearly reflects the archaeological record. We also recommend that national protection is put in place for the archaeological sites and that adequate conservation is ensured, as well as stronger management arrangements. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. ICOMOS IUCN, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. IUCN's evaluation of Trongong Complex is on page 87 of the English version of the IUCN evaluation report and page 93 of the French version. ICOMOS have already introduced the nomination, to which I would add it comprises the 3 formally protected areas as well as other lands which are protected by decree, however not formally designated. IUCN has, we have some images to go with this. I should wait for those, perhaps.
Just waiting for the presentation for IUCN.
Okay, with your permission, Madam Chair, I will continue. Perhaps we can move to the next slide. Okay. IUCN has considered the Trongon Landscape Complex as nominated under Natural Criteria 7 and 8. The landscape complex is the product of deep dissection of relatively pure lower Triassic limestone and includes a diverse suite of classic karst landforms, including cones, towers and ridges, together with interconnected depressions and linear valleys. It also includes rockfalls, subterranean caverns, speleotherms, subterranean rivers and lakes. Next slide, please. Trongan incorporates a landscape of karst depressions connected by foot caves that is considered to be the best example of its kind in the world. The nominated property encompasses a visually spectacular natural landscape with the enclosed cockpits and their vertical high walls rising to over 150 metres, cliffs, rockfalls, karst cones and karst towers. This and the means to visit the site in rowing boats, as you see here, offers a multi-sensory experience of nature with great impact. Next slide, please. Trongan includes the range of karst solution evidence for the endpoint of karst evolution under a humid tropical environment. The landforms and processes demonstrated by the property provide a spectacular example in the region that also includes the South China karst. However, the nominated property as presented also includes areas of development and human activity that do not meet natural criteria. And furthermore, a range of integrity, protection and management issues need to be addressed. With amendment, the nominated property is considered to have potential to meet criteria 7 and 8. Next slide, please. All land within the nominated property is state-owned and managed via the provincial level. A 70-year lease has been provided by the Nimbin Provincial People's Committee over the 3,000-hectare scenic landscape within the nominated property. And this delegates protection, conservation, tourist and promotional activities to a private sector company. A number of other private tourist resort operations exist within the nominated property. Lessees are subject to the objectives and regulations of the property management plan. Next slide, please. The Trongan Landscape Complex has a management plan. However, concerns have been raised with respect to the adequacy of the plan with respect to reinforcing the primacy of protection when considering permissible activities and developments. Linked to this is the need to revise the zoning system, as many uses and activities within the property are inappropriate, such as road, utilities and infrastructure developments. Next picture, please. IUCN also notes that while the nominated area is protected, the laws provide considerable latitude for unspecified levels of tourism development. And as ICOMOS have noted, tourism numbers are currently at 1 million per annum, but are forecast to double to 2 million per annum by 2020, with unknown consequences on this relatively small, very fragile site. IUCN is therefore concerned that the values of the property may be compromised by this growth in use in the absence of clearer guidance on how tourism infrastructure and services will be managed through management planning frameworks and regulations. Next slide, please. So in summary, IUCN recommends the committee, like ICOMOS, defers this nomination of the Trongon Landscape Complex in relation to natural criteria, taking note of the potential of the property to meet criteria 7 and 8, provided a range of integrity, protection and management issues are addressed. And the draft decision is set out on page 17 of the English and page 18 of the French versions of Working Document 8B. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, IUCN. Malaysia, you have the floor.
We thank the advisory bodies for their report. And reflecting on the discussion we had on mixed nominations, item 9B, I would like to commend the State Party of Vietnam for bravely submitting a mixed site nomination at this time. This is a good file that shows interaction between culture and nature, and therefore the draft decision should have been done jointly. My delegation has studied both the natural and cultural aspects of this nomination. The dossier looks at the dynamic relationship between prehistoric population and the changing environment from 30,000 years ago. We consider this an important nomination, and given the short time, I would like to just highlight a few key points. Comparative analysis. ICOMOS says that the comparative analysis is incomplete and should include sites like Nya Caves and Langrong-Yen. However, these have already been included in the dossier, but obviously missed out by ICOMOS. Authenticity. ICOMOS says that authenticity is highly vulnerable due to lack of support and backfilling of excavations, close quotes, and sensitivity of archaeological layers. Madam Chair and distinguished committee members, in archaeology, the authenticity of a site lies not in the empty excavated pits, but in the artifacts and their analysis and conservation. The artifacts have been studied by very prominent archaeologists, and the findings fully substantiated and published. ICOMOS also asked for more research to be done, but there has been tremendous research done in this area. The State Party, however, is also protecting these empty trenches for safety using wood shorings. The number of caves mentioned is 9, but actually it's 14. Integrity. The report states that new roads and tunnels are affecting the integrity of the site. Madam Chair, in a huge limestone area in the jungles of Southeast Asia with snakes and wild animals, which I greatly fear each time I have to go into an excavation site, we need access roads. The property only has one main access road and 2 tunnels about 100 meters long. The boundaries have been raised as an issue. The property's natural and cultural boundary is clearly the whole limestone massif itself, within which are all the significant caves that have preserved evidence of prehistoric human habitation for 30,000 years. The evolution of human occupants and the natural evolution of the landscape took place within the common ground of the massif. The State Party has strengthened protection of the property by using one shared logical boundary for both the natural and cultural elements of the property. ICOMOS asked for more research, and as I have said earlier, there's been a lot of publications on this. The property has been approved, gazetted, and with a legally binding management plan. Madam Chair, dear colleagues, Malaysia strongly feels that Chang'an should be inscribed under criteria 5, 7, and 8, and our delegation has proposed changes to the draft decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Malaysia. Poland, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Your Highness, ladies and gentlemen. I have to say that I'm personally deeply convinced that the inscription belonging to the potentially to the group of mixed natural and cultural sites, however complicated, are the future for the preservation heritage worldwide. In that sense, personally, I deeply support that what has been said before yesterday and much before by Croatia, Portugal, and Serbia. In the case of Trangan, I understand that this is the at least acceptable, if not perfect, symbiosis between human community, local population existing there since 100 years, and nature. I think that is a proper moment to ask the State Party to describe maybe by the expert their thesis, including aspects I mentioned before, and including the results of the really scientific, I underlined, scientific archaeological research, as far as I know, has been done on the property. Using new methodology, by the way, and new technology, chemical, geomorphological analysis, and carbon isotopes, shell isotopes, oxygen, and new leader light distancing and ranging technology. For those who are not familiar, it is completely new technology close to the advanced laser scanning and georadar technology. Based on states of art of techniques and technologies made especially for using Trangan property. As far as I know, in the research program and scientific analysis, University of Cambridge has been involved besides the other. Personally, Professor Ryan Robert and 6 other Southeastern Asia countries experts supporting with Paul Dingwall from New Zealand. I believe to these people. Trang An is since 100 years natural and cultural, naturally composed landscape, connecting forms in many aspects, colors, coexisting ecosystem, etc., and the people with their elements of life. Common interaction building here is absolutely unique in the field of culture and humanity. In this group of inscription, we should promote also the intercultural dialogue, because only here it can be still alive, not only done by academic lecture, still alive. I would like, and I will be very obliged to State Party Vietnam for shortly deliver scientific information focused especially on Criterion 5. Thank you, Your Highness.
Thank you very much. Philippines, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Philippines recognizes the significance of the nominated Trang An landscape complex. As it was evaluated as a mixed site, we note the complexity and challenges involved. We are glad that IUCN has a positive assessment of the site's potential to meet the OUV natural criteria it was nominated for. IUCN has recognized the site's importance and potential contribution, such as the statement made that the landscape complex contains a relatively undisturbed core area of superlative natural phenomena and of exceptional natural beauty and aesthetic importance. IUCN also acknowledged that the geology and geomorphology of Trang An provides an exemplary display of the end stages of lower karst evolution in a humid tropical environment. The Philippines believes that this sufficiently substantiates the site's OUV under the basis of criteria 7 and 8. Upon examination of additional information from the State Party, the Philippines considers that it has sufficiently met the recommendations pertaining to the General Management Plan and Tourism Management Plan. On the matter pertaining to the recommendation of reconfiguring the core and buffer zones of the nominated property, the Philippines believes that it has the key elements of the karst landscape are already within the nominated property. There is no reason to defer the inscription of the property. We request the national and local authorities to work on addressing the issues on the development and human impact involving areas on the boundary of the nominated property which detract from the natural values of the site. We also encourage the State Party to strongly consider renominating the property in the future to extend its core zone in order to strengthen the site's integrity. In this light, the Philippines expresses support for the inscription of the site. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Portugal, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam. We received in due time some clarification that seemed quite convincing in order to overcome what in the beginning we saw as some weaknesses in this nomination, as the ICOMOS and IUCN reports have emphasized. An issue that is keen to us relates to boundaries and legal protection, as misunderstandings keep arising on this issue. As regards Trang An, we are told that it benefits from highest level of legal protection available in Vietnam. And we know that the management plan is already operational and includes measures to prevent several sorts of environmental impacts. And this is a property that mixes natural and cultural values. We cannot but recommend that the paleo-environmental studies be performed in parallel with archaeogeographical investigation, so that landscape change on the long run may be consistently proven. The State Party has confirmed us their commitment to this matter. We understand that research will be an ongoing process in this landscape for many years to come. We also recommend the promotion of a reliable tourism management plan, and we recommend that the thorough description and assessment of today's landscape as a unique relationship of man and nature in a cultural ecological dynamic setting be taken. Trang An represents a unique landscape and carries outstanding universal value of the past and of today. We believe that this will value and clarify the management and conservation of the state. let us take a broader and less inhibited view of the cultural landscape, a continuing meeting point of man and nature, and a learning opportunity about the extreme environmental threats we are faced with today. And all this is present in Trang An. We see no reason to defer this nomination, and we are of the opinion that if Vietnam accepts the recommendations, we can inscribe Trang An on the list. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Portugal, Croatia, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and a good morning to you. We read in the ICOMOS report that the nomination was prepared in close collaboration with the World Heritage Center and the advisory bodies in the spirit and purpose of the upstream process. The other day, under agenda item 9A, we were told that the process showed great merits in improving the nomination procedure. Yet we see this is not exactly the case with the nomination of Trang An Landscape. Going through the factual errors letters in document info 8B4, we can understand some of the reasons for concern that are expressed in the comments by the advisory bodies and the World Heritage Center, namely the precise mandate of the board, for instance, or insistence on the beneficial impact of tourism. That being said, there are some widely divergent interpretations regarding the legal protection of the property. What we would like to know, and this question goes to the state party, is whether you think that the property has or will have adequate legal protection, which seems to be one of the main issues here, especially regarding the tourism business. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Croatia, India, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. India congratulates the government of Vietnam for bringing forth this mixed property of clear outstanding value. Unequivocally so, Trang An is an outstanding place in the Southeast Asian region for demonstrating the way prehistoric people adapted to a changing landscape over a period of more than 30,000 years. The property is indeed rare in terms of evolution, extending back in time to some 30,000 years. In fact, and if I may say so, I think the IUCN itself has acknowledged the outstanding universal value of this property from its report and, of course, from the presentation that we just received from them. In as far as the protection and management is concerned, the state party has assured all of the strongest possible support from authorities at all levels that will ensure the long-term protection and sustainable management of the outstanding universal value of this property. It is also to be noted, Madam Chair, that a particular strength of the protection and management regime for the nominated property is the existence of the Trang An Landscape Complex Management Board, which was established in March 2012. There is also an action plan for the next 5 years, which will include aspects such as tourism management, capacity building, etc. All up, Madam Chair, India would strongly support inscription of this property, and under categories 5, 7, 8, definitely, and possibly also under category 10. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, India. Senegal, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Nous avons attentivement étudié les rapports présentés par l'IUCN et l'ICOMOS. Il nous semble que pour ce qui est des valeurs naturelles, il n'y a pas tellement de débat et que les valeurs universelles exceptionnelles sont avérées. Reste la question culturelle. Et là, nous avons attentivement écouté l'ICOMOS et je pense que la conclusion ne va pas dans le sens de l'énoncé et de l'analyse. On nous a expliqué que durant l'Holocène, ces populations ont fait preuve de capacité, d'adaptation exceptionnelle aux changements globaux. Je pense que c'est des leçons d'histoire intéressantes, utiles. Elles datent de 30 000 ans. Et je pense que même nous, les contemporains, on aurait dû nous inspirer de cela parce que nous sommes face à des changements globaux et je pense que c'est intéressant de voir comment l'homme s'adapte à tout cela. Je pense aussi que les arguments avancés concernant les destructions ou l'irréversibilité entraînées par les fouilles ne sont pas consistants pour la simple et bonne raison qu'une fouille archéologique est par définition irréversible. On ne peut pas reconstruire ce qu'on a enlevé. Ce qui est important, c'est la méthode. Ce qui est important, c'est l'analyse. Ce qui est important, c'est la collecte des données. Ce qui est important, c'est la mise en cohérence des données. Donc je pense que sur ce point-là aussi, ce qui a été fait est intéressant et utile et ça permet de documenter de manière concluante les critères culturels. Et je pense, pour ce qui me concerne, au critère 2 et au critère 5 qui a déjà été énoncé par l'État partie. Je voudrais enfin faire une observation à caractère plus général. J'ai l'impression en écoutant l'IUCN et en écoutant l'ICOMOS qu'ils sont dans une espèce de parallélisme absolu. Chacun fait son analyse suivant sa propre logique. Or, on oublie que dans ce cas précis, la nature, l'environnement, c'est l'assiette sur laquelle la culture est une espèce de métadonnée. Je pense que les organisations consultatives sur la mixité doivent vraiment faire des efforts. Tant que vous resterez dans le parallélisme, vous ne allez pas vous rencontrer. Il faut une espèce de parallélisme asymétrique pour que vous puissiez voir les points d'inflexion, de rencontre, les nœuds autour desquels la culture et la nature se rencontrent, parce que de toute façon, la culture et la nature sont toujours ensemble. En conséquence, nous proposons l'inscription de ce site sur la base des critères naturels 7 et 8 et culturels 2 et 5. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much. Germany, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Germany believes that this property has great potential for inscription, especially on natural values. We would like to make 2 comments, however. First, we learned from IUCN evaluation that the concerns relate to the proposed boundaries, including roads, other infrastructure related to tourism, such as car parks. We would like to ask the state party why these areas have not been excluded, as they detract clearly from the natural values. And secondly, we would like to get from IUCN clarification on the legal status of the proposed area in relation to the protection status needed to preserve the values. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Germany. Japan, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Japan would like to support the statement by Malaysia and other member states and support the inscription of Chang'an on the list as a mixed property. The site has archaeological landscape value, demonstrating the prehistory of human beings who lived in the East Asian coastal area and their response to nature, and the associative value of people's view towards nature with natural scientific values. I'd like to commend the State Party Vietnam for its effort to prepare the nomination and expect further effort on the matter in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kazakhstan.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Being one of the most prominent and beautiful places of the southeastern region of Asia, Trang'an demonstrates adaptation ways of the prehistoric people to changing landscape over the period of 30,000 years. We positively assess precautionary measures undertaken by the state party with regard to tourism development, limestone quarrying for cement and ornamental sculptures, possibility of external water-based pollution and growth in villages. In particular, quarry areas have been excluded from the nominated property and the buffer zone boundary. Any possibility of external water-based pollution through an interconnected system of food caves was removed or minimized due to the net positive outflow of water from the proposed property. Commending the state party's efforts to support and defend OUV, which raises no doubts, Kazakhstan delegation endorses the inscription of Trang'an landscape complex to the World Heritage List on the basis of both cultural and natural criteria. Thank you.
Thank you. Qatar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Qatar believes and recognizes that the importance of the Trang'an landscape, and we know that the IUCN accept that the nominated property meets the OUV under criteria 7 and 8. but IUCN consider that the legal protection is inadequate. Please assure the committee that the property has sufficient legal protection. And also, IUCN consider that there is a threat from uncontrolled tourism development in the property. Please let the state party explain how the tourism growth is controlled. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Turkey, you have the floor.
Thank you. We would like to congratulate State Party of Vietnam for bringing this unique mixed site. The site has clear OUV as it displays the human interaction with nature for almost 30,000 years. This long cultural history of the property has also been closely associated with the geological evolution of the site. Considering the gap analysis in the World Heritage List, we believe that Trang An will contribute to our knowledge on the studies on the human evaluation and adaptation program. Turkey strongly supports the inclusion of this site as a mixed site. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Colombia, you now have the floor.
Gracias, señora presidenta. Colombia valora inmensamente el detallado análisis que han hecho los organismos técnicos asesores, en el cual se pone de presente el gran potencial que tiene esta área para ser inscrita en la lista de Patrimonio de la Humanidad, especialmente bajo los criterios 7 y 8 en lo que tiene que ver con la parte natural. Nosotros habíamos hecho un análisis con base en esos conceptos técnicos, según el cual recomendábamos referir, no deferir la decisión. Sin embargo, dadas las explicaciones que hemos escuchado y los conceptos de los países que hemos escuchado, aceptamos la nominación si el país tiene en cuenta todas las recomendaciones que hacen los organismos asesores, especialmente sobre la de reforzar el régimen jurídico, el régimen legal de protección y manejar adecuadamente el turismo. Gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you very much. Algeria, you now have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. L'ensemble paysager de Trang An est présenté comme un site mixte, culturel et naturel, dont l'évaluation est effectuée par UICN pour les valeurs naturelles et par l'ICOMOS pour celles des valeurs culturelles. S'agissant des valeurs naturelles, les critères 7 et 8 proposés par l'État partie sont retenus par UICN, qui se concentrent sur des préoccupations concernant les aspects liés à la protection et à la gestion du bien, notamment les législations souples autorisant le tourisme, le développement d'infrastructures, la révision des limites pour englober les zones de développement et d'impact anthropologique, enfin plusieurs aspects de la gestion. Il faut noter que le plan de gestion existe, il est dit dans le rapport, et établit des objectifs clairs pour la gestion et comporte des mesures pour protéger la VIE. Il est également dit qu'un projet de plan pour atténuer les effets du tourisme est en cours de préparation. L'État partie aurait pris aussi des mesures pour la protection du bien, telles que l'exclusion des zones de carrière des limites de ce bien, pour en atténuer et réduire les risques. Pour ces points, il serait utile, bien sûr, d'entendre l'État partie. S'agissant de l'appréciation de l'ICOMOS sur l'importance des valeurs culturelles, si l'UICN reconnaît la valeur exceptionnelle de ce site, considéré, je cite, comme un joyau et que sa beauté exquise en justifie clairement la VIE, l'ICOMOS considère au contraire que les conditions ne sont pas réunies pour la VIE, l'intégrité et l'authenticité ne sont pas remplies et base son argumentation principalement sur l'absence de résultats archéologiques de recherche à même de soutenir son point de vue sur la VIE. Et même si nous pensons, Madame la Présidente, que la relation entre l'archéologie et la géologie est claire et qu'elle confirme la relation indissociable entre la culture et la nature dans ce dossier, Il est intéressant, bien sûr, de se baser sur des données scientifiques. Mais nous croyons savoir que ces résultats ont été publiés par Cambridge University Press, par l'auteur de fouilles et des recherches archéologiques. D'autres aspects ont été traités par ICOMOS dans ce dossier, et notamment les facteurs pouvant affecter le bien, des projets d'infrastructures dans la zone tampon qui auraient un impact sur la VE et appellent à la mise en place d'une réglementation appropriée pour la protection et particulièrement la préservation des sites archéologiques. ICOMOS conclut que la justification du critère 5 proposé par l'État partie est conditionnée par les résultats de fouilles des 9 grottes, qui permettant ainsi d'apprécier si la délimitation englobe le matériel archéologique. L'ICOMOS différencie cette inscription. Madame la Présidente, nous vous demandons d'inviter l'État partie à s'exprimer sur les préoccupations de l'UICN qui fondent la décision FIFA de différer et sur les questions soulevées par ICOMOS, notamment les résultats de recherche archéologiques qui sont un préalable à la détermination de la VE. Ceci nous permettra de conforter notre position de proposer l'inscription du bien sur la liste du patrimoine mondial. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much. Peru, you now have the floor.
Señora Presidenta, la delegación peruana considera que el sitio tiene un contenido cultural y natural de valor muy importante para la historia de la humanidad. Los registros en las cuevas, fechados hace más de 33.000 años, que demuestran la extraordinaria capacidad del hombre prehistórico para adaptarse ininterrumpidamente durante 30.000 años a un medio ambiente de cambios dramáticos, desde la era neolítica hasta la edad de bronce y posteriormente hasta la premoderna, es de los valores más destacados del sitio, asociados naturalmente a la excepcionalidad del paisaje natural correspondiente al final de la era de las formaciones kársticas de la región, de indudable valor excepcional. La historia humana del lugar ha sido demostrada en las múltiples publicaciones que incluyen 14 de las 30 cuevas investigadas en la propiedad y cuya investigación continúa hasta el día de hoy. De otra parte, Trang An cuenta con una normativa nacional de protección, pero también con otras normas específicas que protegen y regulan las intervenciones arqueológicas y la gestión del patrimonio, tales como la Ley Nacional del Patrimonio, el Reglamento de Excavaciones Arqueológicas, el Plan Maestro e inclusive un proyecto de plan de manejo e investigación arqueológica para la protección y mantenimiento de la integridad del sitio, entre otros aspectos. Todo ello demuestra, señora Presidente, que el Estado parte cuenta con normas regulatorias complementarias a las indicadas en el dossier. Creemos que los vestigios culturales y los elementos del paisaje de este territorio son relevantes para la historia de la humanidad y deben ser protegidos por la comunidad internacional mediante su inscripción en la lista del patrimonio mundial, haciendo hincapié que deben incluirse las observaciones o recomendaciones que están en el proyecto de decisión recomendado por ICOMOS. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Republic of Korea would like to mention firstly on natural heritage aspect. According to advisory body's evaluation report, it can be assumed that the Trang An landscape complex reflects the outstanding universal value for criteria 7 and 8 as a natural heritage. In this context, we would like to encourage the state party put in place stronger and appropriate management plan in the future to protect this property. For cultural heritage aspects, we believe that the caves would have enough potential OUV as important archaeological sites. However, more research work would be required, as ICOMOS suggests. Under this consideration, the Republic of Korea supports inscription of Trang An Landscape Complex in the World Heritage List as a mixed site. Thank you.
Thank you. Finland, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, Trang An Landscape Complex clearly has a great potential to be inscribed on the World Heritage List. The property has over 1 million visitors every year, and the target is 2 million visitors in 2020. Tourism can generate income and promote sustainable development in the Trang An region, but it will also increase the pressure to develop tourism infrastructure. As stressed by Colombia, it's necessary to have sufficient legal protection and to regulate the developments if we want to preserve the values of the site. Finland welcomes the draft tourism management plan. Still, we think it would be wise to finalize the tourism plan and to strengthen the legal protection before considering the inscription on the World Heritage List in order to ensure adequate protection of the property and to avoid future management problems. We largely agree with Malaysia as regards to the boundaries. The suggested boundaries include very well the geological and scenic values of the property. We see no reason to defer the nomination, but we encourage the state party and the advisory bodies to work closely together to improve the nomination dossier, and we are also looking forward to a revised nomination to be presented to us in the near future. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Lebanon, you have the floor.
شكرا سيدتي الرئيسة، لن أشاغب هذه المرة. Nous voudrions faire une petite remarque technique sur ce dossier. Je ne sais pas si cette remarque intéresse grand monde ici, mais elle pourrait avoir un intérêt pour améliorer le processus d'évaluation des biens mixtes. La remarque concerne la question de l'intégrité soulevée par l'ICOMOS dans le cadre de l'analyse du critère 5. L'ICOMOS nous dit que les limites proposées par l'État partie ne suivent pas précisément la disposition des sites des 29 grottes identifiées à ce jour comme ayant un potentiel de valeur universelle exceptionnelle au niveau culturel et qu'en conséquence, l'intégrité du bien ne peut pas être justifiée. Dans le cas d'un bien mixte, il est presque impossible que les limites qui incluent les attributs naturels et celles qui incluent les attributs culturels puissent coïncider exactement. Il faut tolérer cette imperfection et accepter que les limites du bien soient définies par une sorte de cote mal taillée qui permettent de gérer au mieux les différences de nature entre les deux types d'attributs. Dans le cas de Trang An, il faut accepter que les limites du bien ne suivent pas précisément la limite des grottes, qu'elles incluent d'autres éléments culturels comme l'ancienne capitale Oahu et de nombreux temples, pagodes et sanctuaires qui ne participent pas de la valeur universelle exceptionnelle du site selon le critère 5. Et il faut accepter cela pour pouvoir inclure dans ces limites les valeurs qui justifient les critères naturels. Pour nous, il n'y a rien là-dedans que de très normal. Merci.
Thank you very much. Serbia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A landscape of Trang An with its dramatic mountains, mysterious caves and secret spaces provide a vision of beauty and its metaphor for the Vietnamese culture. There are only 10 mixed properties in the Asia-Pacific region. Trang An will contribute significantly to this small group of special property in the World Heritage Network. Trang An is unique chronicle of traditional human interaction with the environment. This property is also important illustration of the entire karst formation process over a large geographical area and through a long geological time, showing the continuous geomorphologic evolutionary process. Serbian delegation support proposal of Malaysia inscription these mixed sites on the World Heritage List. We would like to congratulate to the state party. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the state party. Vietnam, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We would like to thank the advisory bodies for their efforts. We would also like to thank the state parties for supporting and helping clarify our nomination. We would like to address major recommendations by the advisory bodies as follows. The property boundary is a natural outline of the limestone massif and has been endorsed by IUCN for protecting the OUV under criteria 7 and 8. The same boundary is entirely appropriate for protecting cultural values as it includes all significant archaeological sites. The property and its OUV are strictly protected by the highest available national laws in Vietnam. These are the same laws that protect existing World Heritage sites in Vietnam. The property has a gazetted management plan, which IUCN considers to be consistent with World Heritage standards. A draft tourism management sub-plan has been completed and is now being consulted with key stakeholders. Archaeological sites and artifacts are fully protected, and there is a large body of internationally published research papers and monographs from archaeological excavation. There are no significant threats to the OUV. There is adequate administration, management capacity, staff, and financial resource to ensure protection. The property now has all elements required for inscription under both natural and cultural criteria, as these values are intertwined, reflecting the dynamic interaction between humans and nature, between geological evolution and human history. Our Prime Minister has confirmed to UNESCO on behalf of the government and the people of Vietnam his full commitment to protect the manage the property and its OUV to World Heritage standards. We request that the committee decide to inscribe Chang'an as a mixed property under criteria 5, 7, and 8. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Jamaica, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just a point that we had indicated much earlier for an opportunity to speak. There are two brief observations we wish to make in relation to the nomination of the Trang An landscape, which is obviously an outstanding example of natural and cultural heritage coexisting in harmony. The nomination was conducted under the upstream process, which meant an earlier and expertly guided intervention in the nomination process. While we acknowledge that the upstream process does not guarantee inscription to the World Heritage List, we are certain that it would have had a far greater impact than is reflected in this report. Second, the extent and nature of the factual errors presented in this nomination creates discrepancies that indicate a possible misunderstanding of the property. We, however, strongly believe that the state party has decisively clarified the substance of its nomination as a mixed site. Chair, we strongly recommend that the Trang An landscape be inscribed on the World Heritage List, making it the 31st mixed site on the World Heritage List. Thank you.
Thank you. Poland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Highness. Your Highness, Poland strongly supports inscription of Trang An based on the criterion 5, 7, and 8. And when I have the floor, I have such a feeling that Your Highness, Mr. General Director, maybe we need something like a closing discussion, final general discussion in the end of our session to discuss some meritorical and some important aspects. Anyway, Poland strongly supports Trang An. Thank you very much, Your Highness.
Thank you, Poland. IUCN ICOMOS, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Perhaps I could respond to the various points that have been made by the honourable delegates. The first point was in reference to comparative analysis raised by the honourable delegate for Malaysia. I think ICOMOS certainly did consider the Nia cave and the two other caves and did not suggest that these were not put forward by the state party. I think there's a slight misunderstanding here because what we said was that these sites were not so far in tentative lists, not that they hadn't been included in the comparative analysis in the nomination dossier. In terms of authenticity, We were concerned about the lack of support and the lack of backfilling, not in terms of the empty spaces that had already been excavated, but in terms of the impact on the unexcavated areas, which had the potential to produce more evidence. That was our main concern in terms of authenticity and the lack of adequate protection. In terms of the management plan, a management plan was submitted with the nomination dossier, and we reviewed this. We did not consider that it was nearly specific enough in terms of how the archaeological sites should be protected, conserved and managed, nor did we consider that it appeared to be effective in the overall management of the property. We learned from the State Party that a supplementary management plan now has been drawn up, but that of course we have not reviewed. In terms of the overall issue of man adapting to climate change, which was raised by the Honourable Delegate of Senegal, this is a subject that is now being looked at in many parts of the world, where archaeology and geology and other sciences are being combined to understand better how people reacted to their environment. But there are a very large number of sites around the world where this is being undertaken. So the issue with us was how we could find that Chang'an was in this sense exceptional. And in that, related to that was the question brought up by the Honourable Delegate from Algeria, who mentioned the issue of scientific data and publications. We certainly acknowledge that the results from Chang'an have been published by the publication of Cambridge University Press and others, but this is the case for many of the sites that are currently being excavated. So the issue wasn't publications per se, but the content of the publications that were needed to demonstrate that Chang'an might be seen as an exemplar site, an exceptional one in terms of our understanding of this particular interaction between people and their environment. In terms of the laws, we are aware that there are a large number of laws that the State Party has at its disposal to protect sites. We were concerned that the archaeological sites were being protected under the Special Use Forest Reserve Law. We've looked at the wording of that law very carefully, and although it does actually mention archaeology, it is not giving strong protection to archaeology in terms of the way that some of the other laws that are at the disposal of the State Party would, in our view, give. So that was why we recommended that more specific archaeological protection should be afforded to the archaeological sites within a clearly defined boundary. Finally, in terms of the upstream processes that have been mentioned by the Honourable Delegate from Jamaica, ICOMOS would just like to say that we were not involved at all in upstream processes for this nomination. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. IUCN, would you like the floor? You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Just to supplement the response from ICOMOS on a few points that have been raised by the distinguished delegates. Just to clarify, whilst IUCN have noted in its report the potential for this property to meet criteria 7 and 8, we do not think that OUV is justified at this point, and really the concerns that were raised through the evaluation process centred on 3 main areas concerning boundaries, tourism and legal protection, which I might just respond a little bit further on. In relation to boundaries, we recognise that the boundaries of this property, if it is to be inscribed as a mixed site, need clearly to be constructed in such a way that recognise those attributes, both natural and cultural. However, the evaluation that we undertook found that there were a number of developments which are outlined in the evaluation report, which we saw as inappropriate to be included within this property. And our field evaluator actually specified these in significant detail. And in the report you will note that there are new tourism developments under construction villages infilled former paddy fields, highway and tunnel development. I would add that our concerns about the imprecise nature of the boundaries were reinforced through the response that the state party provided on factual errors, which, if I may quote, said that the boundaries of the Trongang property at this stage are proposed boundaries, as is normal practice at the time of nomination. While they closely approximate the final position, the boundaries will not be precisely determined and surveyed until after the World Heritage inscription. I think this reinforced our concern that we were not very clear on the boundary situation. I would also add that there are concerns that were raised regarding the zoning system within the property, which in many cases does not reflect the on-ground realities. Regarding tourism and management planning, our concerns in regard to this really derive from paragraph 78 of the operational guidelines, which I won't read out, but require us to really ensure that this property does have adequate protection and management as a system to ensure its safeguarding. Essentially, this is a quite a small, fragile site within close proximity to a city of 100,000 people. There is a forecast to increase visitation to 2 million visitors per annum in the next 6 years. And there's a number of developments regarding highways, etc. Coupled with this is the legal latitude that we felt was provided in terms of tourism activities, and of course the 70-year long-term lease to a private sector operator to take control, I guess, of the tourism development in this area. All of this is potentially manageable, and it's pleasing to hear from the State Party that the tourism plan is in development, but we have not had an opportunity to examine that plan. If I could just comment also on the legal protection issue, as ICOMOS have pointed out, a number of these areas within the nominated property are what we would consider formally protected areas under the IUCN system. So the scenic area and the special use forest are afforded legal protection under the pieces of legislation which are noted in the evaluation. However, as we note, there are several areas within the boundary that are not included within these protected areas, and they are protected through national decrees in Vietnam, which we know is a practice that is used, and that legal mandate legal mandate is consistent with the mandate of the Trang Ang Landscape Complex Management Board, and you'll recall that we have some vagueness as to the exact mandate of that board. And lastly, if I might ask my colleague Tim Badman to just respond on the upstream process issues. Thank you.
So thanks, Chair. Just on the one specific point of the upstream process, and to clarify that point, I made a comment in the general item on the upstream process that we need to distinguish between when something is an upstream process where IUCN is providing advice. In other words, as the accountable person in IUCN, I have somebody working on behalf of IUCN who is responsible to me somehow, who can provide advice in the name of IUCN, and the circumstance where experts who are associated with our networks are engaged. And in this instance, we do not have an upstream process, so we don't have a direct connection with between IUCN and the process, but we've certainly seen people who we would regard as very senior members of our network working directly with Vietnam and providing support. But we don't see that as the upstream process. We see the upstream process as something which is about IUCN as an organisation supporting and working directly with states parties and in the name of IUCN, and I think that's an important point that we'll need to be very clear about as we move forward this concept, to give certainty to states parties, but also to ensure that the position that we take is very clear. I think what's also clear in this instance from the answer given by ICOMOS is that as a mixed site process, there was perhaps a stronger engagement in terms of the connections to IUCN on nature relative to the lack of connection to ICOMOS on culture. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Jamaica, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Not to prolong this particular point, but I think we just need to be absolutely clear, and there are no gray areas in relation to the upstream process, and I thank ECOMOS for that explanation. But I'm looking at a document from the state party, and perhaps the state party should be responding to this. And it appears to me that they felt they were a part of what is the upstream process. They have been in close collaboration with the advisory bodies. They've had workshops convened with international experts. So I just wonder if perhaps the state party could speak to that, just so we're absolutely clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Vietnam. Could you please clarify?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We definitely are sure that we have applied properly the upstream process at the recommendation by the World Heritage Center and the regional IUCN and ICOMOS office. We invited some most famous experts from both IUCN and ICOMOS in the name of Professor Paul Dingwall, Professor Paul Williams, Professor Richard Eisenhardt, and they have very carefully approached our case. We have divided our process into several stages, and we carefully use the results of previous stages to decide on what to go on. And only on the basis of the international workshop we organized in 2012, we decide to go on with all three criteria, 7, 5, and 8. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Senegal, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Je profite de cette seconde prise de parole pour rectifier. Il semble que j'ai parlé du critère 2. Dans ma tête, il s'agissait du critère 3. Je veux que ce soit précisé au niveau du rapporteur. Maintenant, à la lumière de toutes les discussions, de ce que l'État parti a dit, je pense qu'il y a eu un effort constant d'être à l'écoute des organisations consultatives, de travailler avec elles et d'avoir aussi un feedback par rapport au centre. Je crois que le processus en amont, comme on en parle, n'est pas encore un élément normatif dans nos textes. Et je pense qu'il faudrait quand même relativiser l'impact que cela peut avoir sur la solidité des dossiers. Ce qui est important, c'est l'argumentaire. Ce qui est important sont les valeurs qui sont avérées. Et là, même en relisant les rapports de l'ICOMOS, tout comme ceux de l'UICN, les éventuelles réserves sont toujours en conditionnel très léger. Mais je pense que les rapports, les informations complémentaires apportées par l'État parti prouvent très clairement que ce site a des valeurs universelles exceptionnelles, aussi bien au plan culturel qu'au plan naturel. Restent maintenant les questions de gestion, les questions de l'impact potentiel que le tourisme pourrait avoir. Je pense que ça, c'est des questions que tous les sites du patrimoine mondial colportent avec eux tous les jours. Je pense que sur ce point, il faut faire confiance à l'État parti, il faut faire confiance à sa capacité à légiférer, il faut faire confiance à sa capacité à appliquer les recommandations que le comité aura à lui faire en rapport avec le processus d'inscription. Merci.
Thank you. With that being said, I will now give the floor to Mr. Rao. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Just wanted to make a brief comment on the discussion that we have been having on the upstream process. You will recall that when we discussed this item 9A on Thursday last, we had very clearly said that when the upstream process was launched in 2009, it was on an experimental basis with a selection of 10 sites from around the region. And I wish to clarify that Chang'an was not one of those 10 sites. So it is not part of the so-called experimental upstream process. But having said that, there have been several sites to which the upstream process has been applied in spirit. In other words, there has been a lot of technical assistance and support provided through experts from the advisory bodies, as Mr. Tim Badman has clarified, and from the Secretariat as well. So there has been a lot of technical assistance extended to states parties on nominations and on state of conservation issues. So there is the official upstream process with 10 sites, and then there are a large number of other sites to which the upstream process has been applied in spirit and in practice. I might also add that although the upstream process has not yet been officially mainstreamed into the operational guidelines, paragraph 122 was amended last year in order to be able to build in some of the principles of the upstream process of engaging very early on with the states parties to help them with their tentative list. So that aspect could also be verified as commented upon by the distinguished delegate of Senegal. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. With that being said, Mr. Rapporteur, could you please read any amendments you have received with regards to the draft decision? You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. And as announced during the debate, we have received amendments from mainly from the delegation of Malaysia, but also during the interventions of the committee members, several of them has made mention to the addition of several criteria. So with their indulgence, I will first proceed to read out the amendments as proposed by Malaysia, and then I will try to, sorry, Alicia.
Madam Chair, I think we said 5, 7, and 8.
Thank you for the correction. Mr. Rapporteur, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to the delegation of Malaysia. So in this regard, what I will proceed to do is to read the amendments from Malaysia, and then I will try to incorporate and accommodate the text or the decision in order to retain the accurate order of this draft decision. So Malaysia's first amendment is to paragraph number 2, reading as follows: inscribes the Trang An, sorry for the pronunciation, Trang An Landscape Complex, Vietnam, on the basis of criteria 7 and 8. I will later I will make the clarifications. Sorry, and 5. Second, Malaysia on previous paragraph 2 commends the state party 4A establishing a boundary for the property that reflects the areas and attributes of outstanding universal value and an appropriate surrounding buffer zone. B, ensuring application of the highest legal protection available in the country, including designation of 3 protected areas of national status within the property. C, commencing revision of the management plan and zoning plan that recognizes the outstanding universal value of the property and ensures that the protection is aligned and integrated into provincial planning. And D, preparing, adding the word preparing and the rest, as is on the screen. Then in paragraph number 4, with the clarification provided, Malaysia is also proposing to describe the site on the basis of criteria 5, but we can move it we can put this into the paragraph, pertinent paragraph, making reference to the criteria. Then Malaysia is proposing amendments which could be paragraph number 5, comments the state party 4. A, publication of a substantial body of work that demonstrates the way that Trang An is seen as an exemplar site related to the way communities adapt to changing climatic conditions. In paragraph B, proposing to remove some words in order to accommodate the language. In paragraph 5C, providing, changing the word provide by providing. In D, change ensure by ensuring. And in paragraph E, changing the word put for putting, and the rest. And previous paragraph number 5, Malaysia is proposing reading as follows: takes note of the following provisional statement of outstanding universal value. This is the accurate wording that we have been applying to all the decisions. So the reference to the criteria are included, as well as the information related to authenticity, integrity, and management and protection requirements. And then Malaysia is also proposing amendments in the previous paragraph 6. Also commends the state party for its very effective use of the upstream process in preparing the nomination, then remove the rest. New 8, proposed by Malaysia, recommends that the state party, A, provides continued support for ongoing archaeological research and publication. B, updates the archaeological management plan as new information becomes available. C, ensures effective implementation of the tourism management subplan, including its measures for preventing overcrowding and environmental impacts. D, revises the property management plan to incorporate the archaeological and tourism subplans and updates it as necessary. Then, a new amendment in previous paragraph number 7, new 9, requests the state party to submit to the World Heritage Center, which is the standard paragraph at the end, to retain the accurate language. But then, as announced by several delegations during their interventions, the distinguished delegate from Senegal, he made the reference to criteria 2. So we can proceed to include it in the pertinent paragraph. Paragraph number 3, sorry, my apologies, is paragraph number 3. Sorry, criteria number 3, I'm sorry. Criteria number 3. And if I may, Madam Chairperson, probably I would just like to ask the distinguished delegation of India, because I heard that they would also like to make the reference to criteria number 10, if I'm not mistaken. But if we can just clarify that, after that there is just some cosmetic changes in the wording of the paragraph in order to accommodate them in the pertinent way. But with that clarification, I think we can ask the delegation of India. Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you. India, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to say that we are not fussy. We are okay with the criteria that you've just read out. Thank you.
Thank you. Germany, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Concerning adding additional criteria under which the property was not nominated, I think this is actually not a very good idea, because there is no basis for this. And we heard the state party, and please let me know if I'm correct, I heard the state party reconfirming the nomination under criteria 5, 7, and 8. So I think there is no basis on adding additional criteria here, if you permit. Secondly, when we come down to the paragraph which speaks on several recommendations and issues which we asked the state party to do, I believe that we should use the word request here. This is what we are usually doing when there are strong points to make, where we need to have additional requirements to be met, even if they come unfortunately after inscription and not before. And actually we need to add here that both the revised management plan, but especially the tourism plan, where we heard that it's under preparation, that this is submitted to the World Heritage Center in soon future. And if I read all these changes here correctly, we are missing these issues about submitting the revised upgraded management plan, and then if it's finally some tourism planning to the center. So I'll try to work on some wording here, but as this differs considerably from the wording which originally was in the decision, I'll try to find a proper solution where to best fit it. Thank you. And additionally, on paragraph 8, I think we heard some really difficult issues on the, no, not 8, on the paragraph 7, on the upstream processes, that there might have been some understanding behind that. So we propose to delete this paragraph at this stage, and I see some nodding there from the center, and I think I understood Mr. Rao right, that this is not an appropriate way to refer to upstream processes here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Senegal, do you agree to removing criteria 3?
Il faut juste qu'on nous dise pour quelle raison on devrait le supprimer.
Germany, you have the floor.
Actually, if this was a question to us why we are proposing to, if I understand correctly, the original nomination was on criterion 5, 7, and 8, and we see no basis for adding an additional criterion because we don't know on what additional criteria 3 because we don't know on what this is building on. Sorry for saying that, but maybe I'm wrong on this. I would seek help from the center on confirming what the original nomination was on. Thank you.
Thank you. Lebanon, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Bon, je suis désolé de ne pas être d'accord avec mon collègue sénégalais. On ne peut pas ajouter un critère comme ça qu'on sort du chapeau. Je veux dire, si l'État partie n'a pas présenté le critère 3, c'est qu'il n'a pas fait de justification pour ce critère. C'est qu'il n'a pas réussi à... Peut-être qu'il y aura, peut-être qu'un jour il pourra le justifier, mais pour l'instant, il ne l'a pas justifié. Il n'y a pas de base que l'État partie a présentée pour justifier ce critère. Donc, peut-être que plus tard, il pourra le faire, mais pour l'instant, on ne peut pas le sortir, nous, au comité, du chapeau comme ça. Concernant la question du upstream, mais could we come to the paragraph related to upstream?
Thank you. Finland.
I'm sorry.
Lebanon, I thought you finished.
Where is the comments the state party to have used the upstream? Yeah. Also commend the state party for its effective use of the upstream process in preparing the nomination. On ne peut pas utiliser effectivement cette formule parce que ce n'est pas un upstream officiel. Par contre, on peut proposer for its effective use of the upstream methodology or upstream spirit or something of this sort.
Thank you, Lebanon. Finland, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that Finland fully supports Germany and Lebanon on deleting criterion 3 from the amendment.
Algeria, you have the floor.
Madame la Présidente, j'ai une proposition pour le paragraphe 7, pour dire tout simplement, félicite l'État partie pour la préparation de la proposition d'inscription conçue, alors, pour la préparation de la proposition d'inscription conçue dans l'esprit du processus en amont. C'est exactement cela, et d'ailleurs ça a été confirmé par M. Rao. Et je crois qu'on évitera ainsi toutes les mauvaises interprétations. Merci.
Thank you. Malaysia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two, please. Okay. We would go with Germany to just nominate this under criteria 5, 7, and 8. And right at the bottom, we accept the comments made by, the changes made by Algeria on the upstream process. Thank you.
Thank you. Senegal, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Nous n'allons pas être plus royalistes que le roi, ni faire l'avocat du diable, mais simplement nous adressons cette fois-ci à l'UICN, à l'ICOMOS. Nous pensons que du strict point de vue de l'analyse de ce critère 3, et on a vu d'ailleurs l'ICOMOS proposer des critères que les États parties n'avaient pas proposés, que du strict point de vue de cette analyse-là, on peut parfaitement accepter ce critère 3, et je m'explique. Nous sommes dans une période extrêmement changeante de l'Holocène. Il y a des changements globaux qui affectent la totalité de la planète durant cette période. Et on sait parfaitement que les stratégies d'adaptation ont varié d'un continent à un autre suivant la latitude. Si on prend par exemple le Sahara, on sait que les périodes humides et sèches se sont succédés et les hommes se sont adaptés suivant les cycles. En Europe, il en a été de même et en Asie, strictement de même. Est-ce que dans votre typologie actuelle de sites de classement, vous avez des exemples multiples qui contredisent cette capacité, durant cette période changeante, à s'adapter à un environnement extrêmement complexe de grottes, de cavités et autres que nous avez présentés? Voilà la question que je pose. Est-ce qu'il n'y a pas de l'exceptionnalité ici? S'il n'y en a pas, ben c'est bien. Et s'il y en a, il faut peut-être un jour y songer. Merci.
Thank you. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. 2 points. It's according to the criterion 3. I think it's to apply to criterion 3, we need further study on archaeological sites, and not only in the cave sites, but also the Hoalu. And those are not included in the explanation in, I understand, in the nomination dossier, but it's an important site. And we would like to ask the state party to continue the protection of the Hoalu site and the investigation there. However, at this moment, we would like to discuss in the 3 at later, but at this moment, we support to inscribe the site in the 5 and 7 and 8. And regarding the Para 7, of course, this is not for strictly in the upstream process. And many countries are inviting international experts, holding a symposium and trying to prepare the better dossiers. I'd like to ask the advisory bodies to look at those kind of efforts done by the state parties. However, at this moment, as long as many countries are doing the same things, and we think it's the Para 7 that's I think the location is awkward. I think it's, we support Germany's.
Thank you. Ikomos, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As far as the upstream process is concerned, I think what has been made clear that this is not, this property is not one of the pilot projects. That is one type of upstream process. The second type of upstream process is where ICOMOS or IUCN give formal advice through their central offices. And that has been acknowledged in quite a number of nominations, and we've talked about it extensively under the upstream processes. What is now being referred to is a third type of technical advice, where the advice of various individual experts is sought by state parties, perhaps through a symposium, perhaps individually. This, so far, has not been called upstream advice. And I think we must be very clear on that point. In the way that the word upstream has emerged, it's emerged in terms of formal advice, if I can put it that way, being offered to state parties, either through pilot projects or through advisory missions or in some other way, through a central process of IUCN and ICOMOS. The advice of individual experts, I'm sure, is very helpful, but perhaps we should, it would be difficult to confuse that and call it part of the upstream process. Secondly, may I comment on the remark made by the Honourable Delegate from Senegal about the possibilities of Criterion 3 and whether there are other properties that have so far been included on the list that might reflect this idea of complex interaction between man and the environment. This has come up in various cultural properties, such as the Rock Islands, Southern Lagoon in Palau, for instance. But ICOMOS looked very carefully at this idea of communities adapting to a complex environment. In some properties, we're talking about recent adaptation. In this property, we're talking about ancient adaptation. But this is an area which is being much explored in parts of the world at the moment. It's a particularly interesting area But I think it's difficult at this moment in time, on the basis of the current knowledge we have, to pinpoint those properties that are going to be seen as the exemplars, or the ones that provide us with exceptional information on man's interaction with their environment. So this is a very interesting area, but one that's growing rapidly, and we need a much better understanding of where the outstanding sites are. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Germany, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I promised to get back to you, the committee, and to the rapporteur with a proposal for a paragraph related to the submission of the different plans which we were looking for and which we were ensured by the state party that at some point they are ready or already there. So if we can scroll down a little bit in the text, and this request would come as a new, well, after the statement of outstanding universal value and before what is still here as new para 7, and it would read, and I read very slowly so that this can be captured. Requests the state party to submit the revised and upgraded management plan and zoning plan to the World Heritage Center, and furthermore requests the state party to finalize, as part of the management plan, a tourism management sub-plan and to submit it to the World Heritage Center. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Germany. Malaysia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've had a useful brief discussion on the upstream process. Since it is not critical to the draft decision, Malaysia agrees to delete it, as suggested by Germany and Japan.
Thank you, Malaysia. IUCN, you have the floor.
So thanks, Chair. Firstly, I think thanks for the consensus on paragraph 7, because I was going to echo the points of ICOMOS that we see here, exactly the sort of situation which we need to, and I think states parties need to learn from in terms of establishing this process in a way which actually works. What we have at the moment has been a process which has not been highly effective. It's been the opposite of what was drafted, so I'm glad to see that we don't recognise that, and that's been removed. And then otherwise, just two comments. I think one is just to recall paragraph 78 of the operational guidelines, which is to just remind the committee that the guidelines we and you work within do ask that conditions, well, that says that for a property to be deemed of outstanding universal value, a property must also meet the conditions of integrity and authenticity and must have an adequate protection and management system to ensure its safeguarding. So that's at the point before inscription. So it's always a little surprising to see a proposal for inscription that leads immediately to a state of conservation report to correct things which we would normally expect to be addressed prior to inscription. And then secondly, I think just on the specifics of the latest amendment from Germany, which relates to the draft tourism management plan, I missed exactly the numbering. I think it may have been 5E, but I think that would be in conflict with the drafting that Malaysia had introduced, which commended the state party for introducing a tourism management plan. But if we heard correctly from the state party, at this stage it is still a draft tourism management plan. So when Mr. Rapporteur, you come to drafting, I think it may be important to reflect the factual position that the state party confirmed that there is currently a draft tourism management plan and that is the work that clearly needs to be completed either prior to or if you so decide after inscription. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. With that being said, Mr. Rapporteur, could you please read the draft amendment?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the clarifications. So, as for paragraph number 2, nobody has... sorry, I think there is one...
Algeria, you have the floor.
Yes, Madam. I have a suggestion regarding the proposal by Germany on the plan. And I have a question, but proposal. I do prefer in order we will not lose time. Alors, on the, what is this? Alors, on 7, OK? Alors, demande en outre, donc dans la deuxième partie, si vous permettez, demande à l'État partie de finaliser dans le cadre du plan de gestion un sous-plan. Nous, on ne connaît pas ce que c'est qu'un sous-plan. Alors, on demande à l'État partie d'envisager ou de prévoir à ce moment-là une section, parce que c'est dans le cadre du plan, là. On ne comprend pas ce que c'est que le sous-plan. C'est plutôt une section pour la gestion du tourisme, tout simplement. Mais un sous-plan, on ne comprend pas ce que peut être un sous-plan. Merci.
Thank you. Poland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is one more point which needs clarification in our opinion. It's the paragraph 3.a, which refers to the boundaries of the proposed for inscription property. The way it reads now, it means we are about to inscribe the site without defining the boundaries of the property. So I would suggest the amendment to this paragraph reading as follows. Modify the boundary of the property to better reflect the areas and attributes of outstanding universal value and appropriate surrounding buffer zone. Repeat, please. Modify the boundary of the property to better reflect the areas and attributes. There is some text which can be accommodated. Attributes of outstanding universal value, and then it reads as and surrounding buffer zone. But oh, that's fine. Thanks a lot.
Germany profusely object. You have the floor.
I'm actually, there's 2 points about this. I think what is proposed by the distinguished delegate of Poland doesn't fit with the chapeau of the paragraph, if I'm understanding that correctly, because we are commending the paragraph and not requesting or recommending them to do anything. So if we would like to take that up, I think it has to go in a different paragraph further below, and I think we're coming here to some critical point. We are asking at the inscription already to modify boundaries, and this is actually something which calls, and I heard some speakers before, for a refill to first clarify boundaries and then inscribe, because otherwise we'll see a minor boundary verification or a major one coming later, which is maybe not necessary if we go step by step for inscribing it, but most of the point is commending and recommending or requesting are different issues, so that has to go separately. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rapporteur, oh, sorry, Malaysia, you have the floor.
We would like to keep to the original, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Because it's to commend, as Germany said.
Thank you. Poland, you have the floor.
Thank you, the delegation of Germany, for an important remark. Maybe the solution is just to remove this point A of the paragraph 3 in full. Thank you.
Okay, with that being said, Mr. Rapporteur, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as for paragraph number 2, we have received no further amendments. So the paragraph will read as follows. Inscribes the Trang Ang Landscape Complex, Vietnam, on the basis of criteria 5, 7, and 8. Sorry. We remove the rest according to what has been clarified. And then, as mentioned by the delegation of Poland and Germany, we remove the first subparagraph in the new 3 in order to clarify the text. For the rest of these paragraphs, subparagraphs, we received no further comments. Then for paragraph 7, we received several comments related to it, and apparently the paragraph could read as follows: request the state party to submit the revised and upgraded management plan and zoning plan to the World Heritage Center, and furthermore request the state party to finalize as part of the management plan a subplan sorry, just give me 1 second. I've been told that since the delegation of Algeria present the amendment in French, I will turn to the French version just to read in the right way.
Mr. Rapporteur, I think Malaysia wants to make an intervention.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would like it to read, request the state party to submit a revised management plan, revised would be upgraded, a revised management and zoning, management plan and zoning plan to the World Heritage Center, which includes a tourism management plan.
Thank you. Mr. Rapporteur, you can proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, here we have one amendment was originally proposed for this paragraph, originally proposed in French, and then we have just received one amendment in English language. So, with the indulgence of the distinguished delegates, I will try to read the French version, trying to capture the comment, the latest comment from Malaysia, in order to make it clear. So I will try to read the French version. Pris, l'État partie de présenter le plan de gestion révisé et le plan de zonification au centre de patrimoine mondial, ce qui incluant un plan de gestion du tourisme et en outre demande à l'État partie de finaliser dans le cadre du plan de gestion une section pour la gestion du tourisme et de le présenter au Centre de patrimoine mondial. So that could be the way paragraph number 7 could read. And then we also have some changes in the paragraph 8. Normally we should remove it as it was clarified along the debate. And we can, well, as per paragraph number 9 as proposed by Malaysia, there was no comments on it or changes. Then in paragraph number 10, we can just add this standard paragraph, but in order to be clear on the comments by the delegation of Poland and Germany, we can remove the previous paragraph 3A and add it in this part as the new 9 probably. This is what I've understood could be acceptable. So if the delegations of Poland and Germany are in agreement to it, we can proceed for the adoption of this draft resolution. Of course, I engage myself to present a clean version of this paragraph, of this decision when available. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Algeria.
I request your indulgence, Madam Chairperson. Alors, could we see the final version of this proposed revised plan? We have to look at it because it is very confusing one, I'm sorry to say. And I will say it in French, if we can go to that one. Ah, voilà. Alors, demande à l'État partie, où est-ce qu'il est? Il est temps. Demande à l'État partie de présenter le plan de gestion révisé. Très bien. Et puis alors, on a le plan de zonation. OK ? Et puis alors, un autre plan qui est celui de la gestion du tourisme. Est-ce que c'est ça la façon de procéder? Si maintenant l'État parti est d'accord pour avoir à gérer 3 plans de façon concomitante, c'est parfait. Moi, je n'ai rien à dire, évidemment. Mais dans la mise en œuvre, il faut bien qu'on fasse attention qu'il s'agit donc de 3 plans sur lesquels il sera attendu par la suite, évidemment, des rapports d'évaluation. Assurons-nous qu'à ce moment-là, c'est comme ça. Mais il faut enlever la dernière partie de ce paragraphe, alors incluant un plan de gestion du tourisme. Voilà, à présenter au centre. Et tout le reste doit être enlevé. Sinon, ça fait beaucoup de confusion. Mais j'aimerais m'assurer quand même, à travers vous, Madame la Présidente, que l'État parti est bien d'accord pour les 3 plans proposés. Sinon, ça va créer d'autres difficultés par la suite. Merci.
Thank you. State Party, would you like to clarify the point made by Algeria? Vietnam, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We are happy with the suggestion proposed, suggestion by the State Party of Algeria, and we would try our best to submit to the World Heritage Center the revised and upgraded management plan, including a detailed tourism management sub-plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Algeria.
Non, pardon madame, c'est parfait. Juste, il faut quand même, donc après le mot Malaisie, 3e ligne, après Malaisie, on va dire, pas ce qui inclurait, incluant un plan de gestion, tout simplement. Merci. Et tout le reste disparaît.
Thank you. Thank you, Algeria. Mr. Rapporteur, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So with these clarifications provided, I will read again the paragraph number 7 as clarified by the delegation of Algeria, reading as follows in French. Pris l'État parti de présenter le plan de gestion révisé et le plan de zonation au centre de patrimoine mondial, incluant un plan de gestion du tourisme. So this is the way the paragraph could be accepted, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rapporteur. With that, if there are no more comments or objections, I now declare Decision 38-8B.4 adopted as amended. I would like to congratulate the State Party of Vietnam on the inscription of their site. Vietnam, congratulations on your inscription. I now give you the floor.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Le chef de la délégation vietnamienne va prononcer le discours de remerciement en vietnamien. Et il y a une traduction en français. Madame, je vous invite maintenant le chef de la délégation, Madame Đặng Thị Bích Liên, vice-ministre de la Culture, du Sport et du Tourisme du gouvernement vietnamien.
Kính thưa bà Chủ tịch, thưa các quý vị đại biểu, thưa quý bà, quý ông, trước hết tôi xin cảm ơn sự hiếu khách mà chính phủ, nhà nước và nhân dân Qatar và cá nhân bà Chủ tịch đã dành cho đoàn Việt Nam và các đại biểu tham dự kỳ họp lần thứ 38 của Ủy ban Di sản Thế giới tại thủ đô Doha xinh đẹp.
Tout d'abord, je remercie Madame la Présidente, le gouvernement, l'État et le peuple Qatar d'avoir accordé l'hospitalité à la délégation vietnamienne ainsi qu'aux autres délégations participant à la 38e session du comité du patrimoine ici tenue dans votre très belle ville.
Vào thời điểm đáng ghi nhớ này, thay mặt chính phủ nước Cộng hòa xã hội chủ nghĩa Việt Nam, tôi bày tỏ lòng biết ơn chân thành tới các quốc gia thành viên của Ủy ban Di sản Thế giới đã quyết định ghi danh quần thể Tràng An, danh thắng Tràng An, Ninh Bình của Việt Nam vào danh mục di sản thế giới. Chúng tôi chân thành cảm ơn và ghi nhận sự giúp đỡ của các chuyên gia Trung tâm Di sản Thế giới, IUCN và ICOMOS trong việc hỗ trợ, nhận diện và hoàn thiện hồ sơ Tràng An, Ninh Bình. Đồng thời, cảm ơn cộng đồng dân cư tại Tràng An và tỉnh Ninh Bình đã tham gia bảo vệ, gìn giữ và phát huy di sản.
À ce moment solennel et historique, au nom du gouvernement vietnamien, je remercie sincèrement les membres du comité du patrimoine ainsi que les organisations consultatives IUCN, ICOMOS, le Centre du patrimoine mondial d'avoir aidé le Vietnam dans le processus de préparation de cette proposition d'inscription. Et nous remercions également le peuple et la communauté locale de Tràng An d'avoir participé aux travaux de préservation et de promotion de ce patrimoine.
Việc ghi danh của Ủy ban Di sản Thế giới đối với quần thể danh thắng Tràng An, tỉnh Ninh Bình, Việt Nam là một vinh dự to lớn, đồng thời cũng giao cho chúng tôi một trọng trách phải bảo vệ, quảng bá những giá trị nổi bật toàn cầu của di sản và chuyển giao toàn vẹn cho các thế hệ tương lai.
L'inscription de notre site sur la liste du patrimoine mondial nous a constitué un très grand honneur pour le peuple vietnamien, mais nous a accordé également des responsabilités lourdes pour la préservation et pour la promotion de ce site, ainsi que de préserver ce site pour les générations futures.
Nhân dịp này, một lần nữa, thay mặt chính phủ Việt Nam, chúng tôi xin cam kết thực hiện nghiêm túc Công ước Di sản Thế giới trong việc bảo vệ các di sản thế giới ở Việt Nam. Xin cảm ơn toàn thể hội nghị và rất mong được đón tiếp các quý vị đại biểu tới thăm Việt Nam và quần thể danh thắng Tràng An vào thời gian gần nhất. Xin trân trọng cảm ơn.
À cette occasion, encore une fois, nous nous engageons à préserver, à exécuter de manière stricte les recommandations, les résolutions de la Convention du patrimoine mondial dans la préservation et la promotion des sites patrimoniaux au Vietnam. Nous remercions encore une fois le comité du patrimoine mondial et nous souhaitons vous recevoir un jour proche dans la province de Ninh Bình, là où se trouve le site de Tràng An. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you and congratulations. Distinguished colleagues, I would like us to reach a consensus before I begin. The next 4 sites are for inscription. If you all agree, and I hope I see no objections to this suggestion, I will allow the advisory bodies to present, and then unless there's an objection, we'll proceed with the decision. I will only allow if you agree, of course, I will only allow for someone to take the floor if they object to the inscription, in order to save time, as we still have 10 sites to inscribe. In addition to that, after the inscription takes place, the state party will immediately take the floor, and I please request the congratulations to happen outside the room in order for us to proceed with the next site. Does anybody object to this proposal? I see Germany smiling or objecting, I can't tell.
Just a clarification, unless there is some amendment to the decision for whatever reason,
yeah, but
then
if you
would take a statement, or we are doing it when we come to adoption of decision?
When adoption of decision, so if you have an amendment, just already send it to the rapporteur to save time, because we're really behind at this stage. Thank you, Germany. With that being said, we will proceed to decision, draft decision 38.8b.7, which is the Great Himalayan National Park. IUCN, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Madam Chair, just to clarify, there's normally just a short opportunity for an introduction on behalf of both advisory bodies, and for IUCN we normally make that introduction just at this point. I've cut large amounts of what I was going to say, but there are just 2 or 3 points to emphasize, with your permission, before we move to the natural sites.
Yes, okay, sure, go ahead. Just trying to make it short.
So, thanks, Madam Chair. Just next slide, please, and we'll skip through many of these, but just to note for the record that we give you our advice.
IUCN, I think you've done this extensively. I would request that you go straight to the subject. Thank you. Can we please go to draft decision 38com, 8B.8, IUCN, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairperson. Could we advance the slides to this site, please? Okay. Thank you. IUCN's evaluation of this property is on page 3 of both the English and French versions of the IUCN Ad Evaluation Report. The Great Himalayan National Park was nominated in 2012 and was considered by the committee at its 37th session in Phnom Penh last year. The committee's decision at that time was to refer the nomination back to the state party to allow it to address a number of issues, principally the need to add Turthan and Sanj wildlife sanctuaries to the nominated area, to continue to strengthen engagement with local communities, and undertake additional comparative analysis to confirm the values of the property. Next slide, please. The State Party advised in September 2013 of 2 proposed changes to the original nomination of this property. The first concerns a redefinition of the property's boundaries to include the 2 above-mentioned adjacent wildlife sanctuaries, and the second concerns the removal of the request to consider the property under Criterion 7. So the nominated property has been increased in area by approximately 20% through the addition of the 2 wildlife sanctuaries. Together with the Great Himalayan National Park, these comprise the Great Himalayan National Park Conservation Area, and the buffer zone of over 26,000 hectares remains from the original nomination. Next picture, please. The property is of significance for the conservation of Western Himalayan biodiversity. It's located in steep Himalayan mountain environments at the junction of the Indo-Malayan and Palarctic bioregional biogeographic realms, and it protects important ecosystems, species and habitats within the globally significant Western Himalayan temperate forests ecoregion. Next slide, please. As we noted in our evaluation of last year, the property is home to an impressively rich array of plant and animal species with high levels of endemicity in the Western Himalayas, including a number of globally threatened species. So IUCN considers that the enlarged area of this nomination has significantly enhanced the value of the property for biodiversity conservation. The property is now a contiguous area with enhanced integrity and will allow more effective protection of important habitats in the valley bottom areas of the property. Next slide, please. IUCN in its previous evaluation noted strong evidence of engagement with local communities and no dissent was evident on site. Subsequent to the finalisation of the current evaluation, IUCN is aware of a number of representations which have been received by the World Heritage Centre both in favour and opposing this nomination. The committee may wish to clarify further from the State Party on this matter. In the revised nomination, the State Party indicated its intention to work through the established legal rights processes to effect a transfer of the 2 wildlife sanctuaries to national park status. However, in discussions with IUCN, the State Party here have indicated that it may not now pursue this transfer of protection status. IUCN considers that the protection status afforded by wildlife sanctuaries meets the requirements of the operational guidelines and understands that World Heritage status would not change the legal status of legal processes to address rights issues. Next slide, please. Local communities are engaged in management decisions. However, more work is encouraged to fully empower communities and continue to build a strong sense of support and stewardship for the Great Himalayan National Park Conservation Area. In summary then, IUCN considers the property meets the relevant natural criterion. Next slide, please. Integrity, protection and management requirements. IUCN duly recommends that the World Heritage Committee inscribes the Great Himalayan National Park Conservation Area under Natural Criterion 10. And the draft decision is set out on page 11 of the English and French versions of Working Document 8B. Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you very much. As we agreed, does anybody object to the inscription of this site? Japan, do you object?
Thank you, Chairperson. We are not objecting the proposal, but listening to the presentation of IUCN, we are proposing the amendments of draft decision.
Thank you, but we agreed that that will happen when we pass on to the rapporteur. So before I pass on to the rapporteur, I would like to see if there's any objections to this inscription or comments to be made. I see none. I therefore pass to the rapporteur. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Indeed, we have received amendments from the delegation of Japan and Germany to this draft decision, mainly in paragraph 4B, and the delegation of Germany and Japan as well are proposing to remove this mention of the small 4B. I call on my colleagues to reflect it on the screen. So the delegation of Germany is requesting the floor, Madam.
Sorry, maybe a misunderstanding. Only 4B is proposed for deletion, not the whole para. Thank you.
Thank you, Germany, for the clarification. Are there any more amendments? Mr. Rapporteur, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, of course, my apologies to the delegation of Germany. We are taking good note of this. Indeed, they are only proposing to remove the 4B as well as the delegation of Japan. But the delegation of Japan is also proposing to delete the paragraph, the original paragraph number 5, making reference to the recommends relevant state parties, including Pakistan, India, China, and the rest. They are proposing, Japan is proposing to remove this paragraph 5. And also in original paragraph number 6, Japan is proposing to remove some references to this paragraph, reading as follows, just in order, if you have this draft decision printed before you, probably it will be more helpful while my colleagues at the Secretariat are taking good note of it. I read the 6 as amended by Japan recommends relevant state parties to consider undertaking a regional comparative study with possible support of the IUCN, other partners, such as the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development and the newly established UNESCO Category 2 Center on World Natural Heritage Management and Training for Asia-Pacific region in India to assess the scope of ecosystems within the Himalayas and adjacent mountains regions with the scope of with a view to identify potential World Heritage candidate areas and boundary configurations in the region, including potential serial nominations extensions. And the delegation of Germany is just proposing also to add the standard paragraph at the end of this draft decision, requesting the state party to submit by 1st February 2016 a report, including a one-page executive summary on the state of conservation and the rest. So those are the amendments we have received for this draft decision, Madam Chair, and my apologies for the time we are taking to reflect it on the screen, but I think we are doing our best on it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rapporteur. Are there any more comments to be made with this regard? I see no comments or objections. I now declare decision 38-8B.7 adopted as amended. Let me congratulate India on behalf of the entire committee for the inscription of your property. India, you have the floor.
Her Excellency Sheikh Al-Mayesa, distinguished members of the World Heritage Committee, delegations of member states, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, Indian delegation would like to thank the World Heritage Committee members and the IUCN and its experts to have bestowed upon us the honor of inscribing Great Himalayan National Park Conservation Area, our unique mountain site in the Himalayan landscape on the World Heritage List. Madam Chair, yesterday you gave us the honor of inscribing the subterranean site, the Rani Ki Vav, and today you have honored us by inscribing the site in the lofty Himalayas. This is indeed a reflection of the variety and diversity in culture and nature in our country, which we take immense pride in preserving for posterity. The GHNPCA is in fact an offering of the local communities to the people in the world. It is well protected by natural peaks and ridges and is truly a very unique roadless wonder. The first step towards the GNSPA inscription were initiated almost 9 years ago, and during this period, a very large number of stakeholders representing scientists, managers, civil society organizations have worked incessantly to put together the huge body of information in support of inscription. It would be important for me to mention about the significant contribution in this inscription process made by a self-motivated group called Friends of GHNP, whose members are located across the globe for making this dream come a reality. We would like to gratefully acknowledge the contribution made by the officials of the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of Himachal Pradesh, site managers and scientists of the Wildlife Institute of India and ICIMOD, and a very large number of civil society institutions and individuals. Thank you once again, Madam Chairperson. I will now request the representative of the Government of Himachal Pradesh to convey his gratitude as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Chair. On behalf of the Government of Himachal Pradesh and the people of the mountain state, it is a privilege for me to convey the gratitude and feeling of happiness on the inscription of the Great Himalaya National Park Conservation Area on the prestigious World Natural Heritage List. This marks the inscription of the first natural heritage site in our state and 7th in our country. I would like to reiterate the commitment of our government for the protection and conservation of the rich natural heritage with active engagement of the local communities. We are grateful to the team of very large number of scientists and civil society organizations for this historic achievement. We are thankful to IUCN for providing outstanding guidance all through the inscription process and for sending excellent experts for technical evaluation. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for providing this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, India. That took 12 minutes. Let's see if we can do the next one in 10 minutes. So we'll move on with the draft decision 38-8B.8. I now invite IUCN to present the nomination of Mount Hamiguitan Range Wildlife Sanctuary in the Philippines. IUCN, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. IUCN's evaluation of this property is on page 11 of the English version of the IUCN Ad Evaluation Report and page 13 of the French version. Next slide, please. The Mount Hamiguitan Range Wildlife Sanctuary was also nominated in 2012 and considered by the committee at its 37th session in Phnom Penh last year. Again, the committee's decision at that time was to refer this nomination back to the state party to allow it to address a number of issues related to the need to resolve outstanding Indigenous peoples' land claims, implement the envisaged expansion of the site and revise its buffer zone, to prepare a plan to manage the anticipated tourism impact, and to develop and implement a monitoring and research program on potential climate change impact. Next slide, please. The Mount Hamiguitan Range forms a north-south running mountain ridge in the southeastern part of eastern Mindanao Biodiversity Corridor. IUCN notes that the resubmitted nomination for the property includes a significantly expanded nominated area of nearly 17,000 hectares, which now encompasses additional values, most particularly areas of significant Philippine eagle nesting habitat to the south of the originally nominated area. The state party has also amended the buffer zone of the property, significantly expanding this area from 780 odd hectares to just under 10,000 hectares. Next slide, please. The property represents a complete, substantially intact and highly diverse mountain ecosystem in a significant bioregion of the Philippines. Its diversity of plants and animals include globally threatened species as well as a large number of endemic species, including those species that exist only in the nominated property. For example, 75% of amphibians and 84% of reptiles are endemic to the property. Next slide, please. The property is also home to a number of threatened species, and the combination of terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems within the revised boundaries of the property provide a refuge for 1,380 species with 341 Philippine endemics that include critically endangered species such as the iconic Philippine eagle and Philippine cockatoo shown in this image here, as well as rare tree and orchid species. Next slide, please. The State Party has provided documentary evidence of the formal and legal declaration of the enlarged sanctuary, extending the level of protection that was discussed in IUCN's earlier evaluation. Additional areas to the south have been afforded protection as wildlife sanctuary through a series of protective measures cooperatively implemented at national, provincial and local level. Next slide, please. Concerning the management of visitor and tourism impact in this ecologically fragile site, the State Party has reaffirmed that no public visitation will take place until a trail management plan is formulated. A well-prepared visitor and tourism development and management plan has been submitted, which details how potential visitor demand will be carefully managed. Climate change impact was previously identified as a potential threat to the elevation-sensitive vegetation of this property. In this regard, IUCN welcomes the Sanctuary Monitoring and Assessment Program for Climate Change Adaptation, which the State Party has submitted and which provides an effective framework for tackling this challenging issue. Next slide, please. The State Party has confirmed the resolution of outstanding land claims related to the nominated area. The written commitments of support have been provided together with the Memorandum of Agreement signed between the Davao provincial government and Indigenous representatives, which addresses claims and ensures the long-term protection of the property. And work is ongoing through the National Commission for Indigenous Peoples to manage relationships with affected local communities and Indigenous groups. Next slide, please. So in summary, IUCN considers the property meets the relevant natural criterion, integrity, protection and management requirements, and therefore recommends that the committee inscribes Mount Hamiguitan Range Wildlife Sanctuary under Natural Criterion 10. And IUCN would like to note that this has been an exemplary process wherein the State Party has responded in a timely and effective way to the committee's recommendations and has brought forward an improved nomination for consideration at this session of the committee. The draft decision is set out on page 11 of the English and page 12 of the French versions of Working Document 8B. Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rapporteur. Have you received any amendments with regards to this draft decision?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have received no amendments. Thank you very much.
Do committee members have any interventions or objections? If not, I now declare decision 38,8B.8 adopted. Thank you very much. Let me congratulate the Philippines on behalf of the entire committee for the inscription of their property. The Philippines, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Philippines would like to thank the members of the committee for the decision to inscribe Mount Hamiguitan Range Wildlife Sanctuary in the World Heritage List. My delegation would like also to thank the advisory bodies, particularly IUCN, the Secretariat and various members of the committee for their invaluable support, including helpful technical advice. We are very proud of this nomination because we went through the process from deferral to referral, and this learning process has substantially improved our capability, our capacity. With your permission, Madam Chair, I would like to ask Governor Malaniaon of the province of Davao Oriental to say a few words. The governor has spearheaded the long process and, more importantly, the consolidation of wide stakeholder support, not only for the nomination, but also the continued conservation and management of Mount Hamiguitan Range Wildlife Sanctuary.
Our deepest gratitude to the World Heritage Committee for the inscription of the Mount Hamiguitan Range Wildlife Sanctuary in the World Heritage List. Our special thanks also goes to the IUCN for their evaluation of the site and their constructive and open engagement with us. The conservation of this property is the Filipino people's gift for the rest of humanity. We take seriously our responsibility to protect the site's high endemic species of flora and fauna, some of which are critically endangered, like the Philippine eagle and the carnivorous pitcher plants. Mount Hamiguitan is likewise home to an expansive, centuries-old tropical pygmy forest. The inscription is a celebration of the global partnership in our shared vision and desire to conserve these natural gifts for future generations. It is also a step forward towards the continuation of monitoring and preserving the fragile ecosystems in the mountain amidst changing climate and typhoon patterns. As governor of the province of Davao Oriental, Philippines, I affirm our resolve as local stakeholders to protect and conserve the sites inscribed outstanding universal value and integrity. Once again, thank you for giving us the opportunity to share this gift with the rest of the world.
Thank you very much. That took less than 8 minutes, so let's see if we can continue beating our record. We will now move on to the draft decision of 38.8B.9, which is the South China Karst Phase 2 as an extension to South China Karst, China. IUCN, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This property, the South China Karst Phase 2, is in IUCN's evaluation on page 17, both the English and French versions of the evaluation report. IUCN would like to draw the attention of the committee that this nomination responds to previous committee decisions calling for extensions of the South China Karst, first introduced in 2007 under criteria 7 and 8. The committee called upon the state party to bring forward a smaller, rationalised series of sites in a single phase to add to the existing site. The South China region has one of the largest karst areas in the world, extending continuously over 550,000 square kilometres and recognised as one of the great karst regions of the world. Phase 2 of the South China Karst encompasses a nominated property of nearly 50,000 hectares with buffer zones of 77,000 hectares spanning 5 separate components in 4 clusters across 3 provinces of China. The nomination of these additional areas, if approved, would contribute to an overall South China Karst cereal property of nearly 100,000 hectares comprising 12 components across 4 provinces. Next slide, please. The property has been nominated under natural criteria 7 and 8. South China Karst Phase 2 contains an exceptional and distinctive array of subtropical karst landscapes with beautiful and diverse examples of Fengkong Depression, Fengkong Gorge, Fengkong Valley, tableland and Fenglan Plain karst features complementing the existing property. The components contain both magnificent positive relief of cone and tower karsts, and also negative landforms such as karst valleys and caves that add to the aesthetic importance. In addition, the 3 South China Karst Phase 2 sites of Shibing, Jingfoshan and Huangjian have more than 90% of their areas covered with natural vegetation and other habitats of rare and endangered species. These natural ecosystems greatly increase the aesthetic values of the nomination. IUCN considers that all 5 components contain superlative natural phenomenon among their karst features. Next slide, please. The components within the existing property already represent the global reference areas for the karst features and landscapes that they exhibit. Karst features and processes within the Jingfoshan, Shibing, Guilin and Huangjiang clusters extend and complement these values, and in the case of Huangjiang, which adjoins the Libo karst, significantly improve integrity. IUCN welcomes the action by the state party to extend the area of Lijiang component of the Guilin cluster by some 62% to encompass important and scenically spectacular karst landscapes in one of the most important and popular areas within the system. Next slide, please. The components of the cereal property are of adequate size, and they have buffer zones which help ensure the integrity of the earth science values, including tectonic, geomorphic and hydrological features. The nominated property is state-owned and managed by a number of government agencies. It is well protected through a strict access control regime within the core zone and through the requirement of all visitors to be accompanied. The laws control development within the boundaries of the property and are consistent in their objectives to protect the key values of the property. Next slide, please. Management plans are already in place for the 5 existing protected areas, and the state party has already established a multi-level management system involving 18 major government agencies, which coordinates management, research and local community issues across all 5 Phase 2 components. The state party has advised of plans to create a single unified administration and management system by 2015, should the South China Karst Phase 2 extension be approved. Next slide, please. IUCN notes that the nomination, whilst not proposed for biodiversity values, included comprehensive information on aspects of the component vegetation and fauna. 3 of the components contain extensive tracts of natural subhumid forest and associated habitats for a large number of rare and endangered species. And this evidence of biodiversity values reinforces previous recommendations that the South China Karst might be potentially considered at some future time against biodiversity criteria. Next slide, please. In summary then, IUCN recommends the committee approves the South China Karst Phase 2 as an extension of the South China Karst on the World Heritage List under Natural Criteria 7 and 8. And the draft decision is set out on page 8 of the English and page 9 of the French versions of Working Document 8B. Thank you, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you very much. With that being said, Mr. Rapporteur, have you received any amendments with regards to this draft decision?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have received no amendments, so you can proceed for the adoption. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that being said, are there any comments, objections, or interventions? I see none. I therefore declare decision 38,8B.9 adopted. Let me congratulate China on behalf of the entire committee for the inscription of their property. China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, at this historic moment, on behalf of the State Party and the people of South China Karst sites, I'd like to express our gratitude to the committee members, to the World Heritage Center, and to the IUCN for your invaluable help for the inscription of this property. South China Karst is a serial property. The first batch of 3 sites was inscribed on the World Heritage List in 2009. Since then, the State Party has made great efforts to prepare the second phase nomination. Following the committee's decision and IUCN's technical guidelines, 4 new sites were selected from numerous excellent candidate sites to compose the second batch of properties. It was really a great challenge. After 7 years of hard work today, the second phase South China Karst has been successfully inscribed together with the first phase. A whole South China Karst World Heritage is finally completed. South China Karst is of great scientific and aesthetic value. It contains the most representative karst landforms such as tower karst, cone karst, pinnacle karst, and other spectacular karst features. It displays exceptional natural beauty. I'd like to take this opportunity to affirm our strong commitment to World Heritage Convention. We will do our best to maintain this property's outstanding universal value and safeguard its integrity. Once again, thank you everybody here, and welcome to the fantastic South China Karst World Heritage Sites. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now that was really quick, so congratulations. Let us move on. We will start discussing the Europe and North America sites with the new nomination from Denmark. I will ask the IUCN to discuss draft decision 38,8B.10, but it seems that Mr. Balsamo would first like to take the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We received a factual error notification concerning this nomination, which is to be found on page 19 of document in fate before Rev. Thank you.
Thank you. IUCN, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. IUCN's evaluation of the Stevens-Klint is on page 53 of the English version, the IUCN evaluation report, page 59 of the French version. And this nominated property is a geological site that includes a 15-kilometre long coastline with fossil-bearing cliffs in eastern Denmark. These cliffs expose Cretaceous and Tertiary strata, and they include the boundary between the Cretaceous and Tertiary, which is the point at which the dinosaurs became extinct. A buffer zone has been defined landward and seaward of the property. Next slide, please. Stevensklint illustrates the best-known global mass extinction event in the history of Earth, 65 million years ago at the end of the Cretaceous period, associated with the massive Chicxulub asteroid impact that brought to the end the age of the dinosaurs. It also is a seminal location where the science that first discovered that the Earth was subject to asteroid impacts that could lead to mass extinction was made. Next slide, please. Thus, this nominated property is a globally exceptional testimony to the record of life on Earth, and its status, with its status in the history of science, IUCN considers that it meets the property under which it is nominated, meets the criterion under which it is nominated, criterion 8. Next slide, please. The property is in a substantially natural location, evolving under natural processes, and includes biodiversity values of European significance. It has a range of locally and nationally significant cultural associations, including in relation to past military history and the past production of building stone. The nominated property, next slide please, and its buffer zone are protected through a variety of European, national and local mechanisms, and subject to the Danish Act on the Protection of Nature and the Act on Coastal Protection. Next slide, please. The boundaries encompass the main features of geological interest. Due to continuous erosion from the sea, the profile of the cliff is constantly changing, and it's kept fresh and well exposed, and the nominated property accommodates the natural processes of coastal erosion. Thus, as the cliff erodes, its fossil record remains fresh and available for science. The nominated property has been designed to exclude active quarrying, and a small extent of the otherwise natural site is made up of a disused quarry, and there is also an inland disused quarry site which provides educational access. Next slide, please. The implementation of the management plan takes place in collaboration between a number of stakeholder groups. The state party has provided full details of a new organisational structure noted within the Stevensklint management plan, which would be implemented by autumn of this year if the property is inscribed on the World Heritage List. And this management system has been drawn up with a high degree of inclusion of local residents, of experts and of other stakeholders. And it provides the vision, objectives and targets for the protection, presentation and sustainable use of the property as a whole, including but not limited to its geological values. Next slide, please. So in summary, IUCN recommends that the committee inscribe Stevensklint on the World Heritage List under Natural Criterion 8, as it meets all the requirements for listing, and the draft decision is set out on page 11 of the English version of Working Document 8B and page 12 of the French version. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, IUCN. With that being said, Mr. Rapporteur, could you please let me know if you have gotten any amendments?
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. For this draft decision, we have received no amendments, so you can proceed for the adoption. Thank you.
Thank you. Unless there are any comments or objections, I shall proceed with the decision declaring decision 38.8b.10 adopted. Let me congratulate Denmark on behalf of the entire committee for the inscription of this property. Denmark, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me first express how happy we are that the committee has approved Stevensklint as World Heritage, and we thank you. We have so been looking forward for this to happen. We also thank our generous Qatar hosts, whose hospitality will be another reason that we shall never forget this day. We appreciate the work that the IUCN in evaluating Stevensklint. It has been a great pleasure working with you and to experience the professionalism and thoroughness with which you have evaluated this and other nominations. The nomination is a result of a truly remarkable cooperation between state players, municipal authorities, and hard-working local people. It is an example of how local efforts can, in the end, lead to the taking of important diplomatic and political decisions. It is therefore my pleasure, with your permission, Madam Chair, to pass the floor to a local representative who has worked day and night for the last 5 years in order to make this come true.
Thank you.
On behalf of the local community and all stakeholders of Stevens Clint, I'm extremely happy, and I thank the committee for its decision. I thank the World Heritage Center and the IUCN for their professionalism and helpfulness, and everybody who's helped us along the way. For years now, landowners, NGOs, local community, experts, the municipality and the Danish government have joined together in a trustful cooperation, working towards this goal that we reached today. This is a very proud moment for us. Stevens Clint is the key to the understanding of evolution, of how an extraterrestrial impact may influence life on this planet, of the dramatic mass extinction that set the stage for the world as we know it today. Now, with Stevens Clint on the World Heritage, we have an extraordinary opportunity to communicate to a broad international audience this important part of the history of life. We look forward to continue our joint effort to secure protection and to support research, education, and interpretation in the spirit of the Convention, and to welcome you all to Stevens Clint. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I would also like, on behalf of the State of Qatar, congratulate you on your first minaret, which I read that opened recently. Just for point of order, I would like to make a suggestion, and I hope I can get a consensus. That is, we have 3 more sites, and 20 minutes before the morning session ends, from the 3 sites, 2 are for extension. So if you allow, I would prefer to go on to the sites that are for extension, and then move on to the inscription of France in the afternoon session, because I know I can secure those 2 sites in the next 20 minutes so we can finish the agenda, and that will leave us with 1 more nomination. Unless anybody objects, I will proceed. I see a nodding, so do we have a consensus? Good. Thank you very much. So with that being said, IUCN, may I please ask that we move to the draft decision 38.8b.12 with regards to the Białowieża forest in Belarus, Poland. You have the floor.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. An IUCN's evaluation of the Białowieża forest is on page 75 of the English and page 81 of the French versions of IUCN's evaluation report. The Białowieża National Park in Poland was first inscribed on the World Heritage List in 1979, and in 1992 the committee inscribed an adjoining Białowieża Puszka State National Park in Belarus as an extension of this area. There have been a range of past decisions of the World Heritage Committee requesting the states parties to create a joint management structure and improve transboundary cooperation. And furthermore, in 2006, the committee encouraged the state parties to consider extending the whole transboundary World Heritage property. The existing transboundary World Heritage property covers an area of 92,669 hectares, 5,000 or so of which are located in Poland, the remaining area in Belarus. And the new proposal presents a significant modification of those boundaries, a large extension resulting in a smaller but slightly better configured area in the Belarusian part of the site, and a 10-fold extension in the Polish part of the property. There are also new buffer zones provided. Next slide, please. The Białowieża forest has been renominated under natural criteria 9 and 10, and as an extension of the existing property, but which is listed under criterion 7. This significant extension of the property is based on the application of both biodiversity criteria through adding new areas of undisturbed forest ecosystems and habitats for threatened species. Next slide, please. The Białowieża forest is an irreplaceable protected area for biodiversity conservation, due in particular to its size and its substantially undisturbed nature. The property is home to the largest free-roaming population of European bison, which is a flagship species of this property. But there are many other biodiversity conservations, and these are extensive, including flora, fungi, mammals, birds, amphibians, and reptiles. Next slide, please. The richness of this area in dead wood, standing and on the ground, leads to a high diversity of invertebrates. Several new species have been described here, and many threatened species are well represented. IUCN agrees with the states parties that no longer applying criterion 7, but adapting the recognition of this property under criteria 9 and 10 is appropriate. Next slide, please. The new boundaries appear to be coherent and consistent with ecosystem values. The buffer zone appears appropriate to provide effective protection of the property. Next slide, please. Protection and management requires strong and effective cooperation between the states parties. The Białowieża National Park, the Polish Forestry Association, and the Białowieża Puszka National Park authorities have an integrated management plan for the property and have signed an agreement to establish a transboundary steering group. The management plan is specifically in Poland is not fully in place. It awaits approval, and the committee may wish to confirm the commitment of Poland to address this issue. Next slide, please. Effective and well-resourced integrated conservation management is the main long-term requirement to secure this transnational property. There are a range of threats. There is also a major fence within the property along the border between the countries to be managed, and this impact needs to be carefully considered in relation to wildlife movements and the management of healthy population gene pools. Last slide, please. So in summary, IUCN considers this property meets the relevant requirements for listing and recommends that the recognition of this new listing would be under criteria 9 and 10. The draft decision, Madam Chair, is at page 13 of the English, page 14 of the French of document 8B. Thank you.
Thank you very much, IUCN. With that being said, Mr. Rapporteur, have you received any amendments with regards to the draft decision just discussed?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have received no amendments, so you can proceed for the adoption. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no more comments or objections, I now declare decision 38.8b.12 adopted. Let me congratulate Belarus and Poland on behalf of the entire committee for the inscription of this property. Representatives of the two state parties, you have the floor.
Madam Chairperson, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates, let me express my sincere thanks to all members of the committee for the positive decision on the extension and the renomination of the Białowieża forest. We are very proud that this joint Polish and Belarusian efforts finally found the positive results here in Doha. I would like also to thank our Belarusian partners. With their cooperation and assistance, the successful completion of this undertaking would be not possible. We are aware that this is a great privilege to have the whole Białowieża forest inscribed on the World Heritage List. This will give us even higher motivation for conducting constant common efforts towards protecting nature in this last primeval forest in the lowland of Europe. The Białowieża forest is the large forest complex on the border between Poland and Belarus. Thanks to the several centuries of protection, the forest has survived in the natural stage to this day. The Białowieża National Park was inscribed on the World Heritage List in 1979 and extended by inclusion of Belarusian Białowieża Puszka in 1992. In 2014, the large extension of the property took place where more than 140,000 hectares with a buffer zone was added to the property. Poland and Belarus has established a close and fruitful cooperation with the aim to intensify and enhance the efforts of protecting the nature of the property. I have the pleasure to inform that Poland and Belarus recently had signed an agreement on establishing a steering committee with the aim to coordinate all activities on inscribed property. At this end, let me use this opportunity to thank the IUCN for the hard work on assessing the application, efforts during the mission to the property, and for positive outcome. I would like also to thank all highly motivated people who were involved in preparing this undertaking, both from Polish and Belarusian side. Once again, thank you.
Thank you very much. And congratulations once again. We will now move to the draft decision 38.8b.13, and that is the extension of the Wadden Sea, Denmark, Germany, Netherlands. IUCN, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In this case, the IUCN evaluation is on page 41 of the English, 45 of the French versions of the document. And next slide, please. The Wadden Sea in the Germany and Netherlands was inscribed on the World Heritage List in 2009 under natural criteria 8, 9 and 10, subsequently with a small boundary modification. And the committee at its 33rd session and 35th session encouraged the states parties of Germany and the Netherlands to work with Denmark to consider the potential of nominating a further extension to include the Danish Wadden Sea. The current nomination responds to these recommendations. Next slide, please. This proposed extension reaffirms and strengthens the existing justification for inscription of the Wadden Sea under criteria that I've mentioned, and the Wadden Sea remains and is demonstrated by this nomination as a depositional coastline of unparalleled scale and diversity, distinctive in being almost entirely a tidal flattened barrier system with only minor riverine influences, and an outstanding example of large-scale development of coastal systems. Next slide, please. The Wadden Sea includes some of the last remaining natural large-scale intertidal ecosystems where natural processes continue to function largely undisturbed. There are a multitude of transitional zones between land, sea, and freshwater that are the basis for the species richness of the property. Next slide, please. This property is a key site for migratory birds, and its ecosystems sustain wildlife populations well beyond its borders. It is an essential stopover that enables the functioning of the East Atlantic and the African-Eurasian migratory bird flyways, and up to 6.1 million birds can be present at the same time, and an average of 10 to 12 million each year pass through this place. Next slide, please. The boundaries of the extended property include all of the habitats, features, and processes that characterize the Wadden Sea. This area includes all of the Wadden Sea ecosystems and is of sufficient size to protect its key features. Both the German and Danish extensions are well embedded within the overall trilateral protection and management system that has been agreed by the three states parties. Next slide, please. The Wadden Sea is surrounded by a significant human population and subject to consequent pressures. Key threats include fisheries activities, maintenance of harbours, industrial activities, oil and wind farms, marine traffic, residential and tourism development. All of these will need careful and ongoing management. Based on the joint declaration for the protection of the Wadden Sea, the cooperation of the Netherlands, Germany and Denmark provides a model system of transboundary management and which fully incorporates the existing World Heritage property and the proposed extension. We think this is a model of effective transboundary cooperation and a particularly commendable use of the World Heritage Convention to underpin that cooperation within the framework provided by this convention. So to conclude in the last slide, IUCN considers that this extension meets all of the requirements for inclusion on the World Heritage List under 3 natural criteria, and the draft decision is at page 15 of the English and page 16 of the French versions of the document. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rapporteur, have you received... Germany, would you like the floor?
But I beg your indulgence, Madam Chair. I would like to make one technical comment and one request to the committee. First, map 2 of the evaluation report, page 52, is not the correct one as revised in the supplementary information. The physical attributes of the property included in section 4 of document 14/38.com/8b are, however, the correct ones. The IUCN has been informed accordingly and, as I understand, consents that assuming the positive decision of the committee, the map has to be adjusted in the formal information as recorded by the World Heritage Center. Furthermore, Germany wishes to make one remark on the draft decision. The request number 8 to the state parties to submit a joint report on the state of conservation of the property by 1st February 2016 is a tight schedule and only 1.5 years after the assumed approval of the extension. I would therefore kindly ask the committee to postpone the submission of the report by 1 year. This means till 1st February 2017.
No, December.
Oh, sorry. According to the new schedule, 1st December 2016. This would allow us to include information from the quality status report on the Wadden Sea that is anticipated to be available in 2016. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Germany. Are there any objections to the proposal made by Germany? With that being said, Mr. Rapporteur, have you received any amendments with regards to the draft decision?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have received no amendment, just this clarification in the paragraph number 8 as requested by Germany and not objected by any committee member. So you can proceed for the adoption. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. There are no more comments or objections. I now declare decision 38,8b.13 adopted as amended. Let me congratulate the Denmark, Germany, and Netherlands on behalf of the entire committee for the inscription of this property. Representatives of the three states, in no particular order, you have the floor. Denmark, you may speak.
How do we do it? This is how it works. Madam Chair, honored members of the committee, on behalf of the state parties of Denmark, Germany, and the Netherlands, I'm delighted to express our gratitude to the committee for approving the Danish extension to the Waddenzee World Heritage Site. By your decision today, the whole Waddenzee is now inscribed in the World Heritage List. It has been a long and exciting journey. While traveling, we have learned much and gained many companions. It is because of the passion of people from all walks of life, together with your invaluable help and continued support, that we have finally achieved this goal. Madam Chair, the journey will continue. Since the inscription of the Dutch-German Waddenzee on the list in 2009, stakeholders and communities have embraced the World Heritage status. They are proud to be part of this unique, globally important endeavor. They have engaged in its protection because they recognize that only if they contribute to its effective conservation, communicate and raise awareness of this natural wonder, it will be a credible mission, and they and future generations will benefit from its beauty and its riches. Our World Heritage is now complete, and we will take this new opportunity to strengthen our cooperation and maintain and enhance the outstanding universal value of the whole of the Waddenzee. Madam Chair, distinguished committee, colleagues and friends, the Waddenzee is a magical place, a place where heaven and earth share the same stage, a place full of experiences and stories. Come and visit and help us to protect this natural wonder. Welcome to the Waddenzee World Heritage Site. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
Are the Netherlands here?
Thank you.
Yes, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since this extension was nominated by Denmark and Germany, we will not take any more of your time by speaking too long. We thank the committee for inscribing this extension on the World Heritage List, and we congratulate the State Party of Denmark with this marvelous result, which in fact is a result of a very good transboundary cooperation in the last years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Germany, would you like the floor? They're too busy, so we'll move on. Once again, I'd like to congratulate the state members who have had an inscription today or an extension. We managed to go through 9 sites this morning, of which 6 were inscribed and 3 we had 3 extensions. With that being said, I think we have come to a conclusion to our morning sessions. This morning, in the afternoon, we will begin with 7A to close 7A, and then we will continue with 8B to close 8B. And then we will go through, the schedule of the normal agenda to catch up a little bit. But with that being said, I'll pass on to the Secretariat in case they have any announcements to make. Petty, do you have any announcements? Petty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I do have announcements, not so many as the previous days. There are actually 3 events. The African group is meeting from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. in room number 239241. I'd also like to announce further to the request of several delegations that the drafting group on draft decision 9C will continue its work today from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. In room number 104, that is the bureau room, and I have been requested to ask those committee members, representatives that would like to join, that the meeting would start immediately after the end of the session. A side event by the advisory bodies, in the advisory body space, room 232, from 2 to 3, you'd be able to learn everything you've always wanted to know about the advisory bodies. These are the announcements for this morning, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. With that being said, congratulations again, and thank you very much for your efficiency this morning. Enjoy your lunch, and we'll see you at 3 o'clock. Thank you very much.